The playoffs have finally arrived. Welcome, sim racing fans, to 3Y TV and live coverage of the Galaxy Cup Series playoffs from the infamous Darlington Raceway, the track too tough to tame. 70 years of this racetrack being a staple of NASCAR racing at this historic venue, and we are glad to have you join us on what will be a tricky night ahead at the Lady in Black. Kenneth Bueno with Andre Grambush here to call tonight's action, with Carlos Costa pushing the buttons for the broadcast tonight. But Andre, it all comes down to this. 26 races gets you here, but the next 10 races starting at this racetrack will matter the most tonight.
Yeah, last week at Daytona, there was no outcome of that race that could have changed the playoff grid or the point situation. So I feel like the atmosphere there was pretty relaxed, but now the points have reset, the playoffs have begun, and you have to perform here. You can't make a mistake, you can't slip up. Nothing less than perfection is going to be what these drivers want here tonight.
And you mentioned that over the past 2 weeks, we've had the playoff picture in solid state, but tonight is that opening for it to shake up. But here is what we're looking off of going into tonight after last week's regular season ender at Daytona. We start with Bryson Ixenbaugh. His 11th win came last week at Daytona International Speedway. He will lead the rest of this field in the round of 16 for now. Cameron Stone will follow through to second. Kevin Steele third. Eric Wineland fourth. Preston McRae in fifth, rounding out this top five. But we're looking at this grid, Andre, now, and we had this kind of locked in for a little while. We had some drivers at least not worrying about it through the past couple of races, at least going into these playoffs. But now, if you're guys like Zach Probst, Tommy Amos, Ryan Samuelson, or Cody Bird, or even any guys even a little further up, you have to start watching because you got to set the tone here tonight at Darlington.
Absolutely. These bubble drivers are very close to being able to clinch another spot in the next round, but they're going to have to prove their worth tonight here to do that. The points towards the end of the grid, as you can see, were very close. And as you can see, last week's race results, I think that kind of sets the tone going into tonight. We got Bryson Ixenbaugh, who won. Cecil Green coming in a very close second after an exciting fuel strategy finish. Danny Myatt behind him. Jack Durham, Zach Probst, Kevin Steele, John Delaney, Eric Wineland coming back for a top 10 after a couple treacherous weeks, Cody Bird in the top 10, which is kind of the momentum you'd think he'd want to carry into this race. And back there in 10th, just cracking the top 10, it's Cameron Caldwell, another driver who had a few tough weeks, but bringing momentum where it counts to Darlington tonight.
Yeah, momentum going to be something that we're going to be discussing over the course of the evening, and definitely something that will shake up and become a trend for drivers that want to continue their success or start their success maybe in the playoffs and try to make a run for the championship. Playoff goes like this, at least the format goes like this. You take 3 races starting in this first round of 16, starting here at Darlington. We'll reach Richmond and Bristol, and after those 3 races are concluded, we'll have 12 drivers come out alive and 4 drivers being sent home, and they won't be able to fight for a championship. And we'll have 12 left. We'll continue to do those 3 race trends all until we get to the championship 4 that'll fight for the title at the end of this season. So lots of pressure for a lot of these drivers, Andre. And, you know, when you're going into these playoffs, you kind of have to flip the switch in some ways. You have to start thinking about points racing. You have to be a little more concerned about where you are, because some drivers that have been in the playoffs have had rough days within the past couple of weeks, and maybe it didn't matter because they were already locked in, but tonight it matters more than anything, because if you have one bad night here, it could be something potentially detrimental. I'm going to go over the track info, see exactly where we are, but if you're a NASCAR fan, it doesn't take much explanation to get over this track. 1.366 miles, 4 turns, 23 to 25 degrees of banking. Opened in 1950. One of NASCAR's crown jewel races. They're actually racing there tomorrow night on Sunday, starting the playoffs as well. You see the field gridding on the start, on the front straightaway, right in front of the start-finish line, in front of the virtual crowd, and that means we'll get to your starting grid. Bryson Ixenbaugh, coming off the win last week, will set pole in the first playoff race of this season. He's at the 23.347, starting on pole. Right alongside him, driver we've been talking about the past couple of weeks, sporting a throwback tonight in the Viagra car, the number 6 of Jonathan Delaney.
Behind them, you got Matthew Woods in that 48 machine and Eric Wineland on the outside. A couple of tough weeks lately, but again, bringing momentum from Daytona. He's outside row 2.
And then coming back to row 3 is the 04 Dave Fugue Jr., who we saw in a couple of races not having the best runs, but looking for a better one tonight. And right 2 is outside, another playoff driver to discuss. And number 3, Brian Mabry, he starts 6th. And then falling back to row 4, Jason Taylor and Cameron Stone will be 7th and 8th in a row number 4. Also sporting some throwbacks along the way. A Heinz throwback there for Cameron Stone. Always great to see in the right sights and colors here at Darlington Racing.
Behind them, you got Christopher Hamann in that 17 machine and Kevin Consistency Steele in that 44 Jimmy Johnson throwback up there on the high side.
And then we'll look back to row 6, Christopher Hamann in the 17. He is also a playoff driver right alongside another playoff driver, the number 7 of Wayne Grassi. He starts 12th. We're going to look a little bit further back the grid. Alex Princeton will follow through, then Damaris Hickenbottom, Ryan Samuelson, Jack Durham, and then row 9, Danny Maya, Jeremy Morrison, Patrick Mush not able to make tonight's event, Brandon Gullett, Daniel Fields, Randy Drumhiller, Cam Caldwell, Josh Carpernall, Cody Bird, Preston McRae, and Zach Probst will lead the 26-car field that we have tonight here at Darlington Raceway. Just as quickly as we started this broadcast, we're going to get to the green flag. Pace car is coming off of turn number 4 down at pit road. We'll take Hicksonbaugh and Dulaney, 2 Camaros at the start of this field. The playoffs are underway as the green flag displays for the first time in the playoffs this season. Let's go playoff racing from Darlington.
I'll tell you what, that outside lane got a great jump. Dulaney challenged Bryson Hicksonbaugh for that start about as good as you can. Unfortunately, the leader obviously gets to decide when to start the race as soon as that pace car pulls off, so that's an advantage that's hard to fight. Now John Dulaney dropping back to 3rd as the 48, challenging on the inside, Ken.
Matthew Woods, who we saw at Watkins Glen just a couple of weeks back, who fought for the race win, was not able to capture, but he has been able to gain spots ever since the drop of this green flag. And we got a yellow just as quickly as we got this green flag on lap number 1. Seems to be a huge pileup actually behind there. And there's the 44 of Kevin Steele with damage. He's a playoff driver worth mentioning. We'll take a replay and see exactly what went down on this incident. This is coming, I believe, into 3 and 4. And a huge wreck with a 32, the 17 of Hamann. Lots of drivers involved in this one early.
Yeah, playoff drivers involved in that. Fortunately, I don't see any terminal damage. I don't think any of those guys are done completely. But that is going to be a accident that set these guys back very early on. They're going to have to fight through this damage as the whole race progresses. I mean, we're on lap 1, and we got a lot of racing left that these guys have to fight through.
So that happened coming off of turn number 4. This is a multi-car incident. We're going to take another look here in the inside of Cameron Steele's machine. This is going into turn 3. He already had some front-end crinkles before this. Might have gotten into somebody, but it started with the 32. They got into the outside wall, slinged all the way down to the racetrack, and then got into Kevin Steele, and he really had nowhere to go. Remember, this track is very tight compared to a lot of the other tracks we visit in this season. Darlington just being a couple of lanes wide. You don't really have much space to maneuver. You see that dash line on the bottom. That's really where the apron starts. And Kevin Steele really has nowhere to go. Christopher Hamann also in the mix as well. He was caught up in this a little later after it developed, but then you see there's really nowhere to escape, no hole to go through. He gets up into the outside wall, hard damage, and that's a playoff driver, the number 9 of Joseph Lester involved in there as well. Huge wreck involving, say, multiple playoff drivers, and some that might have been in the fray too late.
You mentioned how narrow this track is, and that's definitely the toughest aspect of it. This track surface that we race on actually was intended to be the runoff when the track was first designed, but then some guys got the crazy idea that racing up on that banking was going to be faster, and now we're racing on a surface that was actually never really intended for it. So when a wreck happens in front of you, there is so little reaction time, and even if you do have the reaction time, there's so little space to actually try and maneuver your car around it. And when you got guys right behind you that are just as on edge as you are, that's kind of a recipe for disaster. So unfortunate start to the race for a few of these drivers, but maybe a lucky break for some of these guys up front who maybe want to knock out as many pace laps as they can, because if you're pacing, you're not wrecking, and consistency and leading laps is what these guys up front want to have all night long.
Yeah, consistency always key here at a place like Darlington, where it's more of a driver's track. You really have to take your driver's skill and you have to use it to your advantage trying to get around this racetrack, because it is not easy whatsoever. And a little more expansion on this track. Remember, this series has not been to Darlington Raceway since the All-Star race, so there really hasn't been a points-paying race here at Darlington Raceway just yet. So this is the first time they're really seeing this track on a competitive points-paying situation rather than just kind of having fun in their race cars and not really worrying about points or championships. Remember, that was all the way back earlier in the season, so there was still a lot of regular season racing to go. But now that they're attacking this racetrack in the moment, at least for the points-paying standards, it's somewhat of knowledge about how to approach this track. And Andre, is there really a key to making this track, especially since this is open setup and you have to kind of adapt to each corner of this racetrack?
I think most of the drivers are going to set their car up to be good in turns 3 and 4 because it's obviously the tighter of the 4 corners. You have to get a lot more rotation out of the car. And turn 1, being as wide and sweeping as it is, the setup doesn't really matter quite as much. But unfortunately, that's a bit of a double-edged sword because if you get all that rotation out of your car for 3 and 4, that sweeping turn 1 and 2 can start getting really loose for you really fast. So it seems like the better your car is at one end of the track, the worse it's going to be at the other. And I don't think there's one simple fix or setup for any of these guys, but I know that these guys have probably put in a lot of time practicing and figuring out their cars best they can. We saw the qualifying times were incredibly close, only about 0.5 of a second back to, I think, 13th. So very, very close, but we have the lights off on the pace car as we approach turns 3 and 4. And Ken, we're about to go green once again here at Darlington.
Saw a couple drivers go down pit road, most notably Randy Drumhiller. I saw Rain Grassy down there, and of course all the drivers who were involved in that incident getting their damage fixed early. Remember, no fast repairs on these race cars, so they're going to have to get as much beating and banging to get those fenders back straight as quickly as they can to get back on the racetrack, especially those playoff drivers who need those points to set the tone. Off of turn number 4, we'll take the first restart of the evening. Bryson Ixabal jumps out to an early lead and stretches his lead along the rest of this field. Matthew Woods will follow suit. Eric Wineland in the third, and they'll single file out going into turn 1 for the moment.
And what a jump that was for Bryson. I don't think anybody expected him to accelerate while they were still in the corner, but that's exactly what he did, and I think that element of surprise is what got that 2 car lengths lead that he has right now. Although that lead is going to be challenged real quick as here comes Eric Wineland on the bottom of the 48 trying to make the pass up into P2. That car is a rocket ship. That thing just gripped the bottom, sailed around the corner, and now he is gaining on the leader of Bryson Hixenbaugh.
And the drivers on the fresh tires, Eric Wineland obviously being one of them because of this entire group on the fresh tires. They really didn't get one lap in before that yellow came out coming off of turn 4. So they're still relatively grippy in terms of these high downforce packages on these cup cars. So Eric Wineland's able to roll the bottom for the most part early in this run. But of course, we'll see drivers drift up high. We'll see drivers use the lane all the way up to the wall, especially in turn 3 and 4. Where it's the best way to conserve your tires, especially early in a run when you're expecting something longer than, let's say, 10, 15, 20 laps, and you're kind of stretching the moment for the most part. But Eric Wineland coming into second, still falling through Hixenbaugh. We still got single file pretty much all the way through. I think right now the tone for these drivers at the moment just kind of stay safe, not really make any risks, because if you make one mistake, it could be marginal. It could be a huge error going down the road.
Absolutely, and I'll tell you, Eric Wineland is wheeling that thing right now, giving it everything it has, because I think I saw him tap the wall a little bit on corner exit, and that tells me he is stepping on that throttle as soon as he feels the car will let him. And he's doing everything he can to get around Bryson Hixenbaugh. Obviously, a lot of these drivers want to be the one to dethrone the guy who's won 11 races this season, and they maybe want to stall out his momentum in these playoffs. You know, all season long they've been following him, and now the points have reset. We're all on even footing. So this would be the chance to strike for drivers like Eric Wineland, who've had speed all season long, but unfortunately just haven't been able to top what Hixenbaugh has brought with these setups and this performance that he's had thus far.
Still single file through the most part, lap number 11 about coming to the point. And we had a little bit of a battle between Cameron Caldwell and Brandon Gullett. That settled down. And speaking of Cameron Caldwell, he's running with his sponsor in the pits news for tonight's action, and running with a charitable organization, Feeding the Carolinas. It's a charitable effort for him and his team in order to go through charitable organizations and donate to them for each race we go to in the next 4 races. So we'll talk about obviously Darlington, Feeding the Carolinas. We'll head over to Richmond, Bristol, and so forth, and they'll be using that charitable organization to kind of help those people out, help the hungry in the states that they're racing in on this sim. So always a great effort for Cameron Caldwell and his team, and they'll be doing so just as well as he does on the racetrack. Currently sitting 16th right now, so lots of ground to make up. He is a playoff driver, so he's going to try and continue to go up through this field. Kevin Steele is down pit road, still with damage, so he's going to try and get that fixed. He is already about to be set a lap down. He is the last car on the lead lap at the moment, so he'll be looking for at least somewhat of a way to get back onto the lead lap and get that damage fixed early, because we've talked about it a couple of times, Andre, but if you want to make mistakes, better to make them early than make them later.
Definitely better to make them early, but that doesn't make it any less stressful for Kevin Steele. You got to think, this is a guy on the towards the playoff bubble, and he needs to have the performance like the maximum performance he can get, and now early on in the race he's got enough damage that he felt it was warranted to come down pit road, and he's sitting there and he's watching these guys pass him on the track, and he's got to be thinking, come on, let me get back out there. But I think he's making the right call. As much as any driver would want to stay out and try to just fight through the damage, there comes a point where it's slowing you down enough that you kind of have to pit. Otherwise, you're just not going to be competitive, and there's no point in it. So a hard call to make for the 44, but definitely a smart decision to come down and get that fixed.
Yeah, that's always something you have to face, especially when you have damage. Obviously, you never want to be in the situation where you get any damage whatsoever. You don't want to hit the wall. You don't want to be involved in any crashes or any incidents down the road. But in that incident with Kevin Steele, really wasn't a situation where he had lots of room to get away from it. So he just, at this point, just has to get this early and over with, because if it's slowing him down in the long term, it's never going to help, because he's going to go even more laps down, possibly trying to go down pit road or trying any other efforts to at least stay competitive with the guys that have still yet to pick up any damage. As one car gets damaged from the wall, we had some driver go out into the outside wall. Well, that was a hard hit. That's the 66 of Daniel Field. Had a strike with the wall. Luckily, no one else involved and no other spins. We'll take a replay. And I was just mentioning damage as the 66 is slowing down on the racetrack. This is coming off turn 2, way high up on the racetrack. Gets into the 42 of Coppernall. And then everyone getting around the 53 of McRae had to wheel that car to the left to make sure he didn't get involved in any of that stuff. And Daniel Fields will have damage early. Another driver with an early mistake. And turn 2 just being treacherous each and every time you reach around, and not the situation for the 66 at the moment. That's going down pit road. Actually down off of turn number 2 right now on the apron. So he'll try to get something figured out. But meanwhile, Hixenbaugh continues to lead. Still just a little bit less than a second over Wineland and Matthew Woods, Jonathan Delaney. But I'll tell you, these 3 drivers have kind of caught up to each other rather than Wineland catching the leader. They've kind of bunched up a little bit.
They have bunched up, and I think, honestly, even though this track's a little bit smaller, it could be that a little bit of draft is coming into play. When you get on these straightaways, the draft can help if these guys are pushing each other and really working together. Obviously, it's not going to be as big of an effect as we would see at a 1.5 miles or at a plate track, but it could be happening. And Jonathan Delaney obviously qualifying very well. We know he has speed. We know he has the setup. It could be that early on he doesn't either necessarily want to be up front, or he's just feeling these guys out. He's following them, learning their lines. How do these guys run? Because this is all valuable information that you can take going forward into the race. And this early on in the race, maybe there's not much of a point in leading the race or dominating or running second. Why not drop back a little bit, gather some intel, and figure out what's going on?
Yeah, it's a lot of figuring out to get through, especially when you have a stage in at lap 115. That's where we're ending the first stage of the night. We'll have the yellow flag come out at the end of lap 115. So a long way to go to that point. We're still pretty much wrapping up lap number 19 all the way to lap number 20. So still a very, very considerable way to go until we get to the end of that stage. But meanwhile, we have some battling on the racetrack. The 04 of Dave Few trying to get to the back of Cody Bird. Ryan Samuelson is also kind of the third party in this mix, trying to get into the battle. Randy Drumhiller there as well. Lots of guys single file, but all close together. And I saw the 04 tried to make a move to the inside, just wasn't successful just at that moment, but he's probably going to try and hit the reset button. But we have a move a little bit up further the field. Jonathan Delaney right to the back bumper. Matthew Woods in turn 2.
Right to the bumper indeed, as we're on board with that 48, looking back at that number 6 Viagra machine. That car is being driven as hard as it could possibly be driven into these corners. I mean, he's sending it, trying to get around the 48. I think now the car is coming to life. It's possible he's got that long run setup. And, I mean, look at this. He is just charging. Bryson Hixenbaugh might be sweating right now, Ken.
And Jonathan Delaney running one of the many throwbacks we're seeing in tonight's effort. He's running, just like I said when we were covering the grid, running a Mark Martin throwback. Of course, not on a Ford, but nonetheless still paying tribute to one of the greatest drivers in NASCAR history. Mark Martin used to drive that for Roush Fenway Racing, the Viagra-sponsored machine. I think the Ford Taurus back a couple years back. But as you mentioned, he was charging. Now he's getting to the outside. Finally was able to peek the nose on the top of Matthew Wood. So he takes over third. Going to try to get over to Wineland and possibly get up to your race leader if he's got enough time within this run.
I tell you what, you don't see very many passes on the high side here at Darlington. That was really risky and really impressive at the same time. So John Delaney moving up through the order, trying to chase down Wineland, like you said. Seemed like Wineland might have had a bit more of a short run setup car because he was really fast the first few laps and then seemed to have dropped back a little bit. So either he's saving or he opted for a short run setup car, which might be a good strategy here. We know this track is tough. You usually see a lot of cautions here in real life or in the video games. So maybe these guys aren't expecting these runs to go on as long as they've gone on thus far, and they're planning on a green-white checker or a 3-lap shootout towards the end of the race. If that's the case, we got some mind games going on here. A lot of different strategies playing out, Ken.
Yeah, when you're expecting a lot of yellows down the road, you probably are kind of bewildered at the fact that, okay, this is a long green flag run, and we got somebody down in the inside wall off of turn number 2. That, I believe, was the 42 of Coppernall, but he was able to keep it straight, so no yellow on the racetrack. Luckily, I don't think anyone else was involved or anyone spun out for the matter, so we'll take a replay and see exactly what caused this incident. And another strike to the outside wall for Coppernall. It got him brushed the inside wall just a little bit, but that could have been way worse, especially with the guys right behind him.
Oh, that could have been disastrous the way that was playing out, but fantastic driving by everybody involved to make sure that got settled out and sorted out. A driver's side hit isn't anything you ever want to see, but man, that was such a light brush to that inside wall where he's able to get it corrected. He might not even have that much damage, so a lucky break for that 42.
That could have been huge. I mean, you know, you're looking at mistakes at Darlington. You can make a mistake like that off turn 2, and it easily could end your night. We already saw drivers going around in the first caution of the night on lap number 1 on 3 and 4. So easily any error could potentially take a lot of drivers out of this running early. You're looking at the battle for second place right now. And we were talking about Delaney charging up to the field, where he's charging all the way up to Eric Wineland's back bumper. He has gained significant time, and now just about 3/10 between the two, and they're both 2 seconds right behind your race leader, Bryson Hicksmall, at the moment. But Delaney, I think he might be setting up for that long run. I think maybe not a lot of drivers were expecting a longer run, especially now that we're breaching over 10 laps in this run, over 15, I'd say. So it's looking considerably favorable for that 6 car. And right now he's in this mix, trying to catch Wineland to get around. But it's hard. It's always easy to get up to them, but it's harder to get around at this track.
Getting to them is one thing. Passing them is another, especially at this track. Like you said, as you can see, number 44 going another lap down there. Looks like we got issues there for the 22 machine. Let's take a look at the replay, find out what happened. Making his way through the corner, possibly just got a little tight here as he's coming to the exit, following the 162, I believe that isn't hard into the outside wall, nearly hitting the inside, but an evasive maneuver brings him back up safely on the racing surface. A good save for that 22 machine.
That's Jeremy Morrison in that 22 Toyota Camry. He almost got loose once again through the racetrack, and we're seeing a couple of drivers falling victim to that outside wall off of turn number 2. This is a look from Wayne Grassie's front end right now. He's currently sitting behind, but he gained a lot of time after that mistake. He's going to try and pounce on that for now. And I think we did have a little bit of separation between the drivers in second and third. Kevin Steele, I believe, on the fresh tires at the moment, trying to get that damage fixed. He's now back out on the racetrack, trying to muster. He's only 2 laps down, so he's not out of the woods just yet. I think his strategy that we talked about, getting his mistakes solved early, trying to get all that damage resolved now, is better than doing it later. And the fact that he's only 2 laps down won't be too harsh, even though Josh Coppernall just got lapped, and that will allow Coppernall to be the lucky dog and not Kevin Steele. But 2 laps down, certainly better than drivers that are a little bit further back, 13, 14 laps down right now. So I think if you're Kevin Steele, your best bet is just kind of to hang around. But in the meantime, he's getting around Eric Wineland.
The 7 is involved. Wayne Grassie.
Oh, we got a huge wreck down the back straightaway. This is involving the 22 of Morrison we were just talking about, and Wayne Grassie in the 7. Caution out for the second time tonight. We'll take a replay. This is off turn 2, and again, the 22 into the outside wall. This time collected the 7 of Wayne Grassie, and this time resulted in a yellow. We saw a couple of drivers just get away unscathed, including that 22 machine, but this time it was not the charm for them whatsoever. Caution out comes out once again. We'll take another look and see exactly what happened. There is the outside contact. I think Alex Princeton is involved in there as well. He might have picked up some damage along the way. I think he might have some damage to that front end. I don't see any. Oh yeah, I do now. But here's a look at Morrison's cockpit, and this is exactly what went down. Just into the outside wall again, and there it is. You're a passenger at that point.
Yeah, along for the ride. That safety barrier sticks out, and it wants to reach out and hug you on corner exit. Unfortunately, I gave him the hug of death there for that 22. And Wayne Grassy, just nowhere to go. We've seen that already tonight. Just no reaction time, nowhere to go, even if something does happen. This is a tough track, and unfortunately, I don't think that's the last time we're going to see something like that happen. The 22 is still making his way around the track. A lot of damage on that machine, but it would appear the car is still at the very minimum operational, so maybe going to try to get that fixed up and figure something out. But a tough break for Wayne Grassy, who really was just a bystander at that point and got caught up in that with a hard impact to the inside wall. And, the 5 car, Alex Princeton, I don't think he's out of the woods yet, because that hit was pretty much square on the radiator. And we know how iRacing and the simulations can be about front-end damage and the radiator. It's very easy to damage and puncture, so hopefully his car is all right. We're going to keep an eye on him as the race goes on, but everybody's making their way down pit road for fresh tires on lap 33. I can't say I'm surprised, but we're going to see, is anybody going to slide past their stall or make a mistake? Hopefully not. Let's watch the race off pit road then.
Don't think anyone made any mistakes, but it'll be Hickson Ball coming out first with the challenger from Wyland. He'll pick up second, Delaney third, so top 3 will remain unchanged. Matthew Woods fourth, Cameron Stone is currently fifth, but he's losing spots on pit road right now. They're currently still on pit road, possibly getting damage fixed or maybe trying something up his sleeve right now. Currently still sitting on pit road. He's lost a couple spots. There's Randy Drumhiller getting by, and we'll have a field shakeup at least past this top 4. And we'll have the top 4 remain relatively the same as we've got this green flag run underway and a second caution of the evening. Probably should have talked about this at the top of the broadcast, but nonetheless, it's still a factor into how this race will progress. The weather in this race, you started just about 2:30 in the sim, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, so very, very hot outside, or 82 degrees on the graphic there. 77 degrees on the air temp. We've got winds to the south at 8 miles per hour, currently partly cloudy, and the sun will continue to go down as we wind out this 367 lap event. So we'll probably fall into the nighttime, Andre, and I know that we've already seen this a couple times in this series. It's been notable in the iRacing sim and especially league races, that transition from the sunset all the way to the nighttime and how easily that can change, because just like the difference between day and night is drastic, even the difference between sunset and nighttime when you're racing is a completely different beast.
Oh, definitely. The tire model in this simulator is very particular when it comes to temperatures, and it can really change a lot. Back in the day, people would wait into the pit road during qualifying for a single cloud to roll in. That's how much temperature matters. And so a lot of these guys probably have differing ideologies on, do I set the car up to be fast during the evening when we start, or do I set it up to be fast at night at the end? So obviously, I think most of the drivers want to have speed at the end of the race, but if you can have a car that's fast and dominating early on and then maybe tweak it in pit road, make what few pit road adjustments you can make to try and get the best of both worlds, that's another possibility. So it's going to be interesting to see. Maybe some of these guys that are up front dominating right now are going to be challenged by these guys that are further in the back because they just have those nighttime setups. But it's going to be interesting either way, Ken.
And you talk about nighttime setups, maybe Delaney could be in that group. Maybe. We saw him in that long run, and we saw him kind of prosper there. But, maybe he has the setup for the nighttime. I think he might have it in his cards, at least in his race car right now. Obviously, we still have Hickson at the front of this field. There's a lap car. That's the 55 of Brandon Gullett. He will at least take his wave around as soon as we get the 1 to green. He's currently sitting 8 laps down on the racetrack. Jeremy Morrison most likely be picking up the lucky dog, but I don't think so. I think he's still down pit road.
Josh Coppernoll.
P20, so he will stay down pit road, possibly even go more laps down in the time being. And Josh Coppernoll, we saw him. He's running a Terry Labonte scheme tonight, but he has been in trouble, at least for the most part, right now. He got tapped with that outside wall to the inside wall, and is still trying to pick up from where he lost during those incidents. And we got stage 1, lap 115. So as we're rounding out lap number 36, still a long way to go until we get to the end of the stage. And Andre, you're looking at a longer run than what we usually see, because we've had drivers stretch their runs at least maybe 30, 40 laps. We've seen The drivers have their pit stops in between, but we're having 115. We're having 230 stage 2 on the lap 230. So this pit stop might not just be the end. If we get a long green flag run, we're continuing to see pit strategy down the road.
Definitely. Pit strategy is going to be huge here. These stages are a lot longer than some of the stages you see at other tracks. But right now, the lights are off on the pace car. We're getting ready to rack them and stack them, get going again, and hopefully see another long green flag run. I think that's what a lot of these drivers are hoping for. Even if you don't necessarily have that long run setup, it's nice to knock the laps out, stay green, stay clean, not have any incidents to try and avoid. And hopefully that's what we see. But thus far, it's been a bit of a mixed bag tonight, Ken.
Hicksonbaugh, Delaney, Matthew Woods, Zach Probst will be the first 2 rows that are lead the field back to the green flag on lap number 37. And then Damaris Hickenbottom, Dave Fugue will be the drivers in 5th and 6th, rounding out row number 3. Will we see another early start from Hicksonbaugh? And the answer will be yes. Quickly off the gun, he will continue to lead this field. Meanwhile, Delaney did not get a great start, which allowed Zach Probst to get by. So he will come into 2nd. Eric Wineland will fall back just actually way further down. I did not see him in this group. Matthew Woods here. Damaris Hickenbottom now breaching into this top 5. And Dave Fugue, Cameron Stone. Now everybody coming through as Hicksonbaugh continues to lead this field in the 3 and 4. And Probst slowly catching.
Behind that number 6 is the hard-charging 48. It seems like Delaney and Woods have been together all night long, battling it out. Very similar car setups, it would seem, as they have just been bumper to bumper. And Eric Wineland, he has been all night long having a ton of speed, but now down on the apron and slow. Something must have happened to that 31 car as he is making his way around the track off pace all the way down in P18. So not sure what's going on with him, Ken.
Yeah, not sure really what happened with the 31. He was down pit road, and it looked to be hopeful from there, but possibly something down pit road maybe that they missed, or no damage on that race car. So I'd assume no repairs whatsoever to that Ford Mustang. So maybe something that was probably hitting that we did not see, that it probably missed down pit road. And now he's currently scored 18th, 1 lap down. He will get the lucky dog if we have another yellow. Meanwhile, we have a battle a little bit further back behind 4th place. That's Matthew Woods, Hickenbottom, Cameron Stone. We're having a little 2-wide action behind them. Lots of drivers single file for the most part, but we're still seeing some battles, at least sprinkled around. I think drivers might be thinking twice about going too wide at some parts.
Oh, definitely, especially after these first few cautions. I think with any race, everybody feels like they got this confidence that the race is going to stay green. Everybody knows what they're doing. And then you get those first few cautions, and now you're thinking, well, I better be a little bit more careful because it could be me that's wrecked out and sitting in the garage watching these points dissipate. As the 0-4, a huge close call for the 0-4, as he gets way sideways out of the corner and manages to gather it up back on the straightaway. But that could have been disastrous for Dave Fugue, who is looking to have a good run after several weeks of internet issues in a row have basically cost him his races. You're looking right now on screen at the leader, Bryson Hicksonbaugh, as the cars behind try to chase him down. And so far, nobody has had anything for him. But like we talked about earlier, these setups are bound to change. The temperature is going to drop. The lights are going to come on, and these cars are going to turn into completely different beasts. So if your driver's not up front doing well right now, don't count them out, because later in the night, they might make a showing.
Well, nobody's putting the fight up to Hicksonbaugh right now, but there is a fight for Zach Probst and Jonathan Delaney for P number 2. They're currently all mixed up together. I saw Matthew Woods in there just a little bit earlier, kind of fell off the pace. He is now in a fight with Cameron Stone for P4. And Hickenbottom falling just behind. He's currently at the 3rd wheel, trying to hope they possibly slow themselves down, trying to battle on the racetrack, and then possibly get some position from there. And that might have been something I was probably referencing to, because if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race earlier today, you saw the battle between Denny Hamlin and Ross Chastain to the end of this race. Hard charging battling all through those final, I'd say, 15 laps. And then it all went down to Denny Hamlin putting a slide job in 3 and 4 with just 2 laps to go. And then that third party of Brandon Jones came into the picture. He was able to snatch both of those spots and take the win. So, Andre, if anything's unpredictable at this track, it always is going to come at places like these, at Crown Jewels, where the racing is so tough. Drivers are always fighting their race cars. I saw Delaney get a little loose off turn 4. We're seeing drivers constantly battle their race cars, constantly try to fight them straight, constantly try to get them and adjust, especially as the night comes on, like you just said, with their setups. It's tough here at Darlington. It's never easy, and it really never lets you go.
Absolutely. You talk about these crown jewels, and a win is a win. And I think a driver's happy to win anywhere. But I got to say, it's a little bit more satisfying to say, hey, I won at Darlington than it is to say, oh, yeah, I won at Chicagoland. So a lot of these drivers wanting to get this crown jewel, wanting to make sure that it is their name on that trophy. And, I mean, look at Jonathan Delaney, Zach Probst. These guys are driving hard on lap 47. We got a lot of racing left, but you see these guys get loose and swirly. You mentioned Delaney getting loose a couple laps ago. They're pushing these cars, man. They want to win this race. It is a crown jewel, and they're doing whatever they have to do to try and get the most out of their machines.
And when you're trying to push your race cars, you're trying to push as hard as you can. You got to talk about the mentalities these drivers have. Remember, when during the regular season, there was probably not much. There was probably just a little bit of aggressivity, or at least a little bit of nervousness going into the rest of the season, because you're kind of always focused about trying to get a win, or at least trying to get enough points to your resume that you'll have enough points to clinch into playoffs, like we've had a number of drivers do this season already. But Andre, with the playoffs now into this factor, and a lot of drivers, being aggressive through a lot of these races, how would there be more anxiety for these playoff drivers now as opposed to running races in the regular season? And has the mentality changed for a lot of these drivers? Is there somewhat of a flip switch? Are they really changing quickly, or do you think they might be considering some of the strategies they use in the regular season kind of spliced in to what they have in plan for the playoff?
Well, the regular season is a great time to learn, especially if you get a win early on. You're locked into the playoffs. You know you're going to make the grid. You can kind of do some different things, try some different pit strategies, try some different setups, or get creative in whatever ways you can think of to try and find that edge. And if you do find something that's worthy of carrying into the playoffs, then go ahead and do it. By the way, right now, John Delaney making the pass on the low side of that 162 machine, now securely up into P2. A lot of speed behind that 6 machine, but it doesn't seem to be very stable speed. He's gotten loose a few times as I've been watching him. So a glass cannon is what I describe that 6 car as right now as he chases down the leader. But back to the strategies. Like I said, regular season, a good time to experiment, a good time to figure things out. But when the playoffs start, you start to get a little bit more anxious. You start to think, well, I don't want to try anything that's too risky. I don't want to try anything that I haven't been doing that's not familiar. But sometimes you kind of have to. If you got drivers like Bryson Hickson-Bob with 11 win stickers on their driver rail there, you got to get creative. And it's a risk every time, because if you get creative and it doesn't work in these playoffs, that could potentially knock you out of the grid in the next round. But if it does work, you have everything to gain. So a lot of thought and strategy going into what these guys are doing week by week as the playoffs progress, especially around tracks stuff as this is now. We have a yellow flag on the circuit. Not entirely sure what happened. We're going to try and identify that for you guys. But I'll tell you what, a throwback race and a throwback broadcast. You guys might have noticed, no, your monitors didn't turn into a 4x3 CRT television. We're just using some throwback graphics tonight. And it was the 20 car, Danny Myatt, involved in that. Looks like he was side by side with another driver on the low side, usually the preferred lane. No, he was on the high side of the 58 machine, and just a little squirrely after some contact with the wall. Tried to turn it right and get out of the other guy's ways. That was the right decision. Definitely saved those cars on the low side from being involved, but at the sacrifice of his own machine. A lot of damage to the right side of that car that he's going to have to hopefully try and get fixed down pit road, Ken.
Yeah, we were watching that battle as they were progressing. That was him and Preston McRae going side by side. This was contact with the wall, and he got loose. Almost hooked it all the way down to the 53, but was able to save it back up the racetrack, but unfortunately got back up into the wall, and that did not help his situation whatsoever. And he's going to have damage, another playoff driver with damage to fix down pit road. But the good news for him, he won't be the only one down there. The rest of the field behind Hicks and Ball will take a trip for that pit road stop. And of course, this probably won't be the final pit stop that we'll see before the end of stage 1 at lap 115. But nonetheless, we'll still have drivers getting those fresh tires, trying to set up for the semi-long runs as Hickson Ball gets out front. Delaney sits to second, but look who sat in the third coming off pit road. That was Cameron Stone. Huge pickup down pit road.
Absolutely massive position gain there for Cameron Stone after a problematic first pit cycle. Speaking of problematic pit cycles, I believe that the issue with Eric Wineland earlier, where he was in on pit road, I think he got a pass-through penalty for some offense, but he is now looking to get the wave around. So he's going to be back on the lead lap, trying to make a charge back through the field. And I think he's got time to do it, Ken. I mean, we're on lap 54. You mentioned the stage is at 115. We're not quite even halfway to the stage. So if you were ever going to make a mistake where you got to drive back through the field, I guess now's the time to do it. But obviously, none of these drivers want to be making blunders like that during the playoffs. So watch for Eric Wineland to charge towards the front, or at least make an attempt.
Yeah, and that goes back to the conversation. Making mistakes early, you can easily fix them early and get them situated so that you can focus at least on the rest of your race going all the way down. And you mentioned the long stages all the way up to 115, so we're not even really halfway through the stage ending and way further from the halfway portion of this race, which will slip in as the night starts to progress, and we'll see how those drivers adapt. We saw a lot of changes in the top 5. I'd say the top 3 all the way back. We saw Cameron Stone slip into third. Zach Probst was up there in third behind Delaney prior to the yellow. He sits now in fourth. Damaris Hickenbottom was kind of looking a little bit, kind of on the outside looking into those battles. He was just kind of running his own race, so he will now start fifth on the next restart. Brian Mabry, who we really haven't talked about for most of the night, he will start in sixth. So we really haven't talked about Mabry that much. He is one of the playoff drivers that we discussed, and he is one of those drivers that at least, was one of those drivers on points, I'd say. And he is one of the drivers a little further back on the points, right in front of the likes of Probst and Samuelson, Cody Bird right now. So I think if your drivers like Brian Mabry, are you looking to set that kind of tension early? You're kind of gaining points as much as you can to have a cushion for maybe if you have a bad race at Richmond or Bristol?
All of these playoff drivers are going to be pushing their cars and trying to get as many points as they can. But I think you're right. These bubble drivers that are closer to the cutoffs, they got a little bit more to drive for. They got a little bit more reason to take risks and push their car a little bit harder, because if they don't, they might just get eliminated. If you're not pushing your car and somebody like Cody Bird is, that, you might be ahead of him now, but that point situation could flip-flop. So Brian Mabry piloting that beautiful number 3 Dale Earnhardt throwback, trying to scavenge every point he can to make a comeback as the playoffs have begun tonight.
A beautiful throwback for the 3, and another beautiful throwback right to his inside, Damaris Hickenbottom. We're seeing a lot of beautiful cars and beautiful colors that you really don't see through the rest of the season. Darlington is always kind of that gateway for a lot of drivers to express, their favorite drivers. Of course, we have people like Cameron Caldwell running for charitable organizations. You have drivers like Preston McRae sporting the sponsors that they usually like to run on the sim and having the throwback versions of those. And we have different drivers with different colors. It's always a way to express yourself, and also the drivers that maybe are integral to the NASCAR history, and maybe drivers that you have more memories of growing up. Maybe your even favorite driver, you can get a throwback of them, slap that on your race car, and you can run that. And it's always a lot of fun to be artistic and kind of think of the ways you can throw back to different cars and try to mix it in with the modern type Cup cars that we have, the Camaros, Mustangs, and the Toyota Camrys. While we used to see old Mustangs and Camaros back then in the 60s and 70s, back when NASCAR used to run more street style car, just modified street cars, as opposed to the full-on stock race cars that we have here in 2020. So always a great way for drivers to kind of express their love for the sport of NASCAR, and especially motorsports in general. I know a lot of us have that passion, and I know a lot of us, if we have a little Darlington race in the league races, we always like to splice on our little throwback schemes and have a little fun with that. Andre, I know probably you and I have probably done this a couple of times. I actually did a throwback a week ago, I think, to Jimmy Johnson, one of my favorite drivers. So it's always fun to do that here at Darlington. But back to business. We're going to get the green flag at lap 58 with Hickenbottom Delaney still commanding this field. Hickenbottom continues the trend of early jumps. He will take that early jump. Cameron Stone will take that early jump of his to try to get to the inside of Delaney.
Cameron Stone and John Delaney going into turn 1 side by side, but it is John Delaney that's going to forfeit the position and drop into line there in third. Behind him, you got that 162 machine. Zach Probst been strong all night, running up front. probably just taking it easy for a while, trying to make sure he's not in any incidents, but still running up front and making his presence known. So Cameron Stone, this is the first time we've seen him this far up in the grid all night, especially after that pit road incident where he ended up sitting in his stall for a while. Maybe a penalty, maybe some business to handle outside of the car, who knows? But now up into P2, and that car is a rocket ship. He has a lot of speed as he is putting a little bit of a gap between him and Delaney, but that could be because Delaney's getting a little loose out of these corners. When he keeps that car planted, he's actually closing that gap a little bit. So it's going to be a battle real soon between the 57 and the 6.
And Cameron Stone, we saw the heartbreaking end to his race at Daytona last week. He was running with his teammate, the driver right in front of him, Bryson Ixaval, the two high-side teammates. They were working together at Daytona, working in the draft. They seemed to be the two favorites coming out of that race, especially in the final stage. And then Cameron Stone got into an incident that sent him loose, I believe. He went down the racetrack, but there was no yellow, so he fell back all the way through the field, and he really lost the draft and had no way to get all the way back up front to the end of that race. So he's looking for a better run, especially now that you got the regular season down. Even if you have a bad race last week at Daytona, it doesn't matter, because you have to look ahead. You have to look at races like now. You have to look at races like Richmond, Bristol, where you have to get the maximum performance out of your race car, and small little mistakes or small little setbacks won't matter in the regular season anymore, because you've already passed it. It's already gone by. So you have to start thinking about that at least a little bit. Now we're looking at a fight for P3 between Delaney and Probst. Probst still not yet to the back bumper, but very, very close. I might see a move possibly within the next couple of laps if he's able to get there. And at that point, still single file for the most part. Hixenball still in control, but just about half a second.
I'm not sure we've mentioned it yet, Ken, but for those of you at home, you can identify the playoff drivers, the drivers who are eligible in the playoffs by a red spoiler and a red splitter. So if you see that, they're probably in the playoffs. Some of these schemes, it kind of blends in and it's hard to tell, but that is our identifying factor. We've also got a banner across the windshield that you can see right on the top there by the roof number that says they are in the playoffs. So just a bit of an identifying factor. There's John Delaney trying to get to the inside of Cameron Stone. Not quite enough speed. He's going to say, all right, maybe not this time, and he's going to regroup, but still on the attack, running that high line right up against the wall. I can't tell you how difficult that is to run up there, Ken, because let me tell you, in real life, you got a pocket of air. When these cars in real life run against the wall, the air sort of repels them, and it kind of creates this cushion where it's kind of actually difficult for them to hit the wall, whereas in the simulator, you don't have that pocket of air. You don't have that cushion. When you get to that wall, it's there. So driving on the very edge is what Delaney is doing, right up against the wall, and it seems to be working out for him as the sun is setting. When they're making their way down the backstretch, that sun is right in their eyes. That's got to be blinding, which is really difficult considering the fact that they're heading into the tighter of the corners on this track when they're making their way down the backstretch. So they've got to hit their braking point just perfectly because they are braking, but they got to do that pretty much blind because the sun right there, you can see it. He can't see a thing in that car. So until that sun sets, that's just an added challenge to an already tough track, man.
Yeah, it is scary to run that high line in 3 and 4. I remember there was the ERL tryouts for Anthony Alfredo's iRacing league, and he had a challenge to get into the league, which was running Darlington in the heat. It was I believe it was 90 degrees on here on this race surface, but it was earlier in the day, but you had to deal with the heat of the racetrack and how slick the cars can be, and you have to run all the way at the wall in 3 and 4 to get the most amount of time. And boy, I've tried it. It is scary. It is very scary to be so close to the wall and know that any little mistake can put you there. And also the sun, that's a great point because we really don't talk about this much on the sim in terms of how much the sun can blind you out in certain corners. Places like Homestead Miami Speedway have the sun set and it's right down the front straightaway and you're looking directly at it. You kind of have to look around and try to find your markers to the point where the sun and the glare doesn't really affect you as much. But I feel like as soon as we got a wreck now, Dave Fugue is involved. He's around on the inside. I don't think a yellow has been triggered just yet. I don't think they went fully around, but damage to both of those race cars. This is coming off turn 2. There's Eric Wineland to the bottom. I think they were the drivers involved, and yes, sir, it is. Starting with the 04, and then Kevin Steele, nowhere to go.
No. Man, Kevin Consistency Steele has consistently been caught up in incidents tonight. Unfortunately, not the kind of consistency that we normally see from him, but we're riding on board now with Dave Fugue. Just a little bit loose in the corner, bit of an overcorrection, and then right here you can see the perspective of Kevin Steele as he just has nowhere to go. He went low trying to avoid the accident, But unfortunately, the 0-4 was already on his way down to that bottom lane, so not much either one of those guys could do. Hopefully, Kevin Steele didn't get too much more damage than he already had. You can see that front body panel, the splitter, is pretty much gone. And if this was a track that had a lot of grass, I might say that's an advantage, but around this track, you want to have as little damage as possible. So just a rough start to the playoffs so far for that 44 machine. And, you know, we talk about how long this race is, and it can be frustrating, when you have such a bad start to the race and you're looking at another 200, 300 laps where you got to wheel this wounded car that you know isn't going to have the pace because of the damage. And you almost think, what's the point? Is it worth it to even continue running? But it is. It always is, because somebody else somewhere is probably going to get involved in an incident. You're going to see a few more DNFs. And now, Cameron Stone being passed by John Delaney in that 6 machine, a little bit of a side draft going into the corner. Textbook move by John Delaney to reclaim that 2nd spot. And now, wow, Cameron still on the attack now. The roles have reversed on the bumper, pushing him down the backstretch, trying to get to the bottom lane, a little bit squirrely, but not able to quite get the side draft that John Delaney was. I don't know. Are we going to see John Delaney drive away now, or is Cameron Steele going to be able to stay with him?
We really haven't seen Delaney, and that's a great point. We really haven't seen Delaney spread out amongst the drivers and the peers that he's been battling with, especially further back 2nd, 3rd, 4th. He was battling there and made that pass as Cameron Stone gets into the outside wall. Going to lose the spot to Zach Probst, and he's going to have some damage on the side of that Ford Mustang. But we were seeing that pass between Delaney and Stone, and what a patient move by the 6 of Delaney. He was waiting on that back bumper for so long just to find that opening, just to find that little bit of a run, that little bit of an advantage. And as soon as he found it coming off turn 4, he immediately took it, and he made success of it, and now he takes over the 2nd position over Cameron Stone. Of course, Cameron Stone getting into the wall, that's a whole different scenario. Now he's going to have to try and fight with Zach Probst for 3rd and possibly try to get back to Delaney. I think, Andre, that did help Delaney get past the rest of the guys in 3rd and 4th. So I think maybe that answers your question. He is pulling away from the guys right behind him, at least for now.
He is pulling away. The gap now to the leader is going to be 3.5 seconds. So he's got to make up 3.5 seconds within the 40 or so laps remaining in the stage. We're on lap 74 of 115 in the stage, 367 laps total. Going back to Cameron Stone getting into the wall, this track is a consistency track. You have to be in the rhythm. You have to be in the groove. And when a driver like Delaney makes a pass on you like that, and they make such a great move and get around you, that throws you out of your rhythm. Suddenly you're not hyper-focused on your line. You're focused on the other guy, and it kind of rattles you a little bit. And when that happens, it's easy to make mistakes, get a little bit overzealous, and get into the wall like Cameron Stone did. Now I think the damage possibly holding him back a little bit, as the 162 has been able to hold his own. It doesn't seem like the 57 machine has tried to throw too many attacks. I'm not sure that car is capable of it right now with that damage he has on the right side. So the 162 machine up in P3, trying to get up to John Delaney. It's about a second between them. So right now, the top 3, we got a little bit of separation between them. But behind, we do have some battling going on the track. Back to the number 48 and the 12 of Cameron Caldwell. Woods and Caldwell are pretty close on the track right now, going into turn 1. That's going to be for the 7th position. And behind them through the field, let's see what we got going on. We got Eric Wineland. We talked about Wineland. We said he was going to make a charge to get back through the field. Well, he is in P11, trying to crack that top 10 after getting the free pass last caution. So his lap times are pretty good. Last lap around, he ran a 29.6. And compare that to John Delaney, the guy running 2nd. That's a 29.1. Cameron Stone's last time around was a 29.5. So close lap times all around, and Wineland looking to crack that top 10.
Wineland leading this group, followed by Princeton, Drumhiller, Samuelson. Those drivers all in this 4-car train led by Wineland. And Wineland trying to catch up to the next car on his list to breach into the top 10. The 217 of Jack Durham currently sitting just about, I'd say, 2 seconds ahead of Wineland at the moment. He's currently on the back bumper of Preston McRae. This is another 4-car train that you just mentioned, Andre, that we saw Matthew Woods get around Preston McRae, and he got around Cameron Caldwell in the process. So he's been around those 2 cars, gaining a lot of positions on the racetrack. That leaves him into the top 7. Going to try to catch up to Hickenbottom a little further up the road. But we're seeing a lot of battles here, at least spread out. I don't think a lot of these drivers are really just trying to send their way into passes. I think we're seeing more of what we saw with Delaney, just kind of choosing where you're faster, choosing where you have that advantage to the point where you can make a pass. And if you're going to make that pass, probably do it on the front straightaway because it's the safest bet at this point.
Absolutely. That's a good point because turn one being the wider sweeping corner, you got a little bit more wiggle room to play with when you make those passes. But if you try to make a sailing pass into 3 and 4 where it gets a little bit tighter, that's a little bit of a different situation. The cars are braking harder, which means the weight distribution is going to change. The car is going to be unsettled. And being too wide when that car is trying to fight you at every step in turns 3 and 4 isn't exactly what you want to do. Number 6 of John Delaney getting around the lap car of Dave Feud right now. So the number 04 has gotten back on the track, but a lot of damage has held up his pace, and now everybody trying to work their way around him. Delaney did get held up a little bit, but not as much as Zach Probst would have hoped, because Zach Probst is now side by side with the 17 machine, catching up to the 04, weaving his way through this traffic, trying to keep up with Delaney. But right now, the separation from the top 3 only growing, Ken.
And that 17, one of the drivers that is a lap down, or at least multiple laps down, is the 17 of Christopher Hamann, another playoff driver on the list of the round of 16. So he, along with Kevin Steele, is having the troublesome night here at Darlington Raceway in the Lady in Black and not treating them fairly well at the moment. And Christopher Hamann currently sitting 15 laps down. He was involved in that lap 1 incident with Kevin Steele and Alex Brinson and I believe one other driver that I'm forgetting to mention at the moment, but involved in that incident in lap number 1, just trying to muster the best he can, because as much as you're a damage race car, he's part of the wounded list, like you mentioned, Andre, with Kevin Steele on the wounded list, just trying to putt around the racetrack. But you mentioned that if some driver gets somewhere out there, if some driver gets into an incident or some driver gets damaged, that gives you points, regardless of if that driver's a playoff driver or not. If that driver up ahead of you gets an incident, or they're having a tough night and they're slow and you're able to get by, you're able to gain positions on the racetrack, that means points gained. So it doesn't matter whether maybe you can have a bad night. If you stay out on the racetrack, have that never give up attitude, you can gain spots which maybe you never expected to get. And then all of a sudden, you're probably not in too deep of a hole going into Richmond next week.
Right, and you don't want to be too far in a hole going into a short track like Richmond, because that is going to be very treacherous. But, you know, you talk about that never give up attitude. That has won many championships in the past. If you've ever seen the movie Rush, at the very end, when the guy has to pass 3 cars in 3 laps from half a lap down to get the championship, and then he does it. You know, that's a real story. That really happened in a racing series, and it can happen here. So never give up, never just pull off and let those other guys take the points that you could potentially claim. That's the kind of attitude that these drivers have to have, because otherwise, why are you even out here? You know, you got to have that never stop, never give up attitude. Cameron Stone now seems to be closing in a little bit to Zach Probst. He fell a little bit further back when they were working their way through that traffic, and now the gap closing once more. Only a couple tenths between them as they make their way through the corner. Cameron Stone maybe has a bit of a long run setup. Who knows? It's kind of hard to tell what these guys are running, what they have up their sleeves. But the temperature is starting to drop. We see that sun setting. So not only have we been on a long run, and we're going to see setups change in that fashion, but the track is cooling down. So this is the starting point. This is when we're going to start to see that flip-flop of guys who have nighttime setups versus guys who set their cars up for the daytime. And we're going to be seeing a lot of changing hands, I think, pretty quick here as Cameron Stone continues to try to run down the 162.
And that brings up another point, because I'm curious to see, as soon as the night falls, I'm curious to see whether those drivers that are on the better nighttime setups that are quicker when the track is cooler, how will they get up the field if they're drivers maybe like Eric Wineland, Cameron Caldwell, maybe some drivers a little further back in the field. I know we talked about Delaney probably having a nighttime setup. He's holding his own very well right now in second, but I want to talk about the drivers just a little further back, probably within the latter portion of this top 10, or even maybe back to the top 15. If they have that nighttime setup, if they're quicker than the drivers ahead of them, the question is, how do you get by? Do you get by through fuel strategy? Do you get by through the green flag pit stops? Do you get by through those restarts? Is there ways to find speed where some other drivers won't? Is there somewhat of a factor that plays into how you're able to carve through this field? And if so, how many positions will you be able to gain to there, as the 42 Coppernaut almost got into the outside wall once again. That was behind Delaney. Remember, those guys are getting by lap traffic as they go. They're not the only ones in smooth sailing. Hicksaball slowly getting around the lap cars in the lead, but it's not like there's no challenge for that 63 either, because either lap car, regardless of how big the gap is, can slow you down, even if you're getting off of turn 2, especially off corners like turn 2, where you're trying to carry as much speed as you can, coming and drifting up to the outside wall without hitting it, and you have to kind of adjust your line for the lap cars that are also trying to find their way around the track. It's a challenge for a lot of these drivers, including the race leader, which it seems to be now like smooth sailing, and it seems to be like a Sunday cruise, but it's not all puppies and rainbows up there for the 63, as we've got a fight for P2. Zach Probst and Cameron Stone. This is third and fourth. They're still close together. Cameron Stone, I don't think that tap to the wall really kind of affected him, Andre.
No, I don't think it did either. It seems like that damage is definitely not holding him up too much. Sometimes you can luck out with that damage model, man. You get a little bit of body damage, a little bit of crinkling going on, and it still doesn't really hold you up. But, you talked about trying to find speed where others have not. And, a wise man once said, what everybody else does, do the opposite. So if everybody comes down pit road, takes tires, maybe you stay out. Try and get that track position. We know track position is really important here. If everybody doesn't pit, yeah, maybe come down and get those tires, see what you can do on fresh tires. And as we come to the end of the stage here, and I'm not sure what the fuel mileage is here, but fuel mileage could play a factor with how long these stages are. And if nobody's trying to save, if everybody thinks they have to pit, maybe you try to save. So for a lot of these guys, it might be smart to just try to think outside of the box and do whatever they can to find that speed. But right now, we got a train of cars here, starting with the number 17, a lap down. Cameron Caldwell making his way on the outside to try and navigate him. He's got the 5 car in tow. That's Alex Princeton. And they're going to navigate that lap car with ease, as he's going to go way down to the apron, let him by, no issues, and make their way, hopefully, further up towards the front of the field. Cameron Caldwell had a few good races recently. He's had a lot of pace, a little bit squirrely there, man. But he's had a lot of pace recently, and he qualified well tonight to boot. So maybe as the night goes on, the track temp goes down, he's going to come to life, Ken.
Yeah, Cameron Caldwell currently running. I think he's gained a pretty good amount of spots since the drop of the green flag. He's been a little more silent than some of the other drivers that we've seen, but nonetheless, he has gained spots throughout. I saw him further back, I'd say probably 15th, 16th, but he's now picked up to 11th, but he's super squirrely. He's going to hit the wall, and around he goes on the back straightaway, around and into the inside wall. We'll see if the caution is displayed, and I don't think it has, so we're still under the green flag conditions. The 12 is going to try to whip it back around to get back on the racetrack safely, and no yellow. I was expecting the yellow to come out there. We're going to take a replay. This was the development. We were watching it live as it happened, and the 12 back around on the racetrack trying to get back to pit road. This is on board in the in-car cam with the 12, and squirrely through 1 and 2 has capped a lot of drivers out of this race.
Yeah, you can see him sawing on the wheel there, Ken, just trying to get that car back under control. Unfortunately, it just jumped out from underneath him. What a terrible break for the number 12. I was literally just talking about him, saying how much pace he's had, and talk about the commentator's curse, huh? That you hate to see it, especially when a caution doesn't come out. I mean, he hit that inside wall a ton, and I think if this was real life, you probably would have seen a yellow. But unfortunately, this is the simulator, and the game did not decide that was caution worthy because he wasn't on the racing surface. He wasn't putting anybody else's race in danger by being all the way down there. So it stayed green, and now he's got to make his way down pit road to see if he can get that thing fixed up. But a ton of damage, hitting that wall in probably the worst place that he could hit it. We're on board now with Bryson Hicksonbaugh, that 63 machine with that red roll cage, as he is trying to get around some more lap traffic ahead. The thing about lap traffic is the more of them you pass, the faster they get. If you're passing the guy in last place, he's not going to have a whole lot of speed. But when you're lapping the guy in, let's say, 14th, he's going to have a lot more pace, which makes it harder for you to get around them and harder for you to make a clean pass. So things are only going to get tougher as this stage progresses. We're on lap 98 of 115, so a little bit more time that Hicksonbaugh's got to spend trying to navigate this lap traffic that we've seen has caused a little bit of jumbling early on with some of these guys. So it is going to be more and more hectic as the race progresses, but we're about to take lap 100 of 115 in the stage, Ken.
And just approaching 16 laps to go until we conclude stage number 1, and the yellow will come out at the end of lap 115, and we'll have the field re-racked and most likely go down pit road. This has been the longest run all race long, especially under green flag conditions. We would have had that yellow if it came out for Cameron Caldwell and development on Cameron Caldwell. He has now disconnected from the race along with Joseph Lester, so those two will be out of this race for the remainder of the evening. We probably won't expect to see them back out on track. You're looking at the race summary at the bottom left corner of your screen. We're about approaching lap 100 of 367. We've had 3 cautions, 14 laps, caution laps. Our average pace is just about 173 miles per hour, 29.92. We're seeing the fastest lap set by Eric Wineland. We were talking about how he was trying to come back up the field, currently sitting 9th. He currently holds the fastest lap, 27.244. We've had no lead changes so far. It's all been Hicksonball at the front of this field, commanding everyone through as he continues to get around the lap cars. And considerably Kevin Steele, you saw him get around the 64 of Cody Bird, so he puts the 14th place driver a lap down. Now urging closer to the 30, Randy Drumhiller, to continue putting drivers a lap down, and that'll further help his case as he continues to run just about 5.5 seconds ahead of Jonathan Delaney. And Zach Probst and Cameron Stone, we were talking about how close they were together in this run. They have not let up. They are still very, very marginally close to each other. They really haven't, none of them have really fallen back. We haven't seen Zach Probst gain any time, and we haven't seen Cameron Stone lose any. So they've been stable for the most part, and possibly maybe a setup for a pass, but I think I'd say their setups are fairly equal, Andre.
I would agree with you there, but real quick, not to change the topic, a development on John Delaney, I think something might be wrong with that car. He spent 2 laps consistently grinding that outside wall. He's got a little bit of damage to that right front fender well and a little bit of damage to his passenger side door, so maybe his setup is just not built for this insanely long run that we've had, or maybe the track temp has changed. He wasn't quite prepared for it, and it may have been a little bit of driver error, but either way, unfortunate for Delaney, who lost a little bit of pace getting into the wall like that. Luckily, the kind of damage he has shouldn't hold him back too much as he now makes his way around Cody Bird on the high side, working around the corner, but seems like he's got that car back under control, Ken. He's kept it off the wall, no more mistakes. It could have just been he got out of his groove. I mean, that's easy to do here. I mentioned it's a rhythm-based track. You have to be focused. You have to be in your rhythm. And if something throws you out of that, sometimes it's easy to make little mistakes like that, Ken.
And I'm kind of smacking my head at the point that we really didn't mention the Darlington stripe at this track, what it's most notable for. And we've seen a lot of drivers get them already, including Delaney, like you just mentioned. I'm surprised I didn't really bring it up through most of this race, so I probably should have said that way earlier, considering it's one of the things that everyone talks about when you go at tracks like Darlington. But lots of drivers getting taps on the wall. We saw Cameron Stone get that tap to the wall, and it really wasn't effective, at least to his race car, in a harmful way. He stayed up where he was, and he's been consistent in his positioning. He lost one to Probst, and we saw him lose it to Delaney, but nonetheless, he's never really fallen out of the top 5. So even with the damage to Delaney, it probably won't be as harmful as it may look on the racetrack. You see the crinkle to the fender on the right side, but it probably won't be too much to affect any handling situations or probably anything down the road. And if he goes down pit road, it probably won't be hard to fix. Probably just a couple seconds of option.
That's exactly what you want to see when you make your way down pit road, Ken. Just a few seconds of optional repair. Sometimes you get surprised. You take a hit that you think was pretty hard, and you pull it into your stall, and it says 5 seconds. And at that point, you're kissing your steering wheel saying, thank you, because you don't want to sit in your pit stall too long waiting for that thing to get fixed up when these guys are out here making laps and taking points. But speaking of taking points, it's Cameron Stone to the point on the inside of the 162, trying to make the move, and unfortunately going to lose his pace on the bottom, now falling further back than he was. So it was a bold attempt, but unfortunately, I just think that bottom lane wasn't there for him. It didn't stick like he expected it to. So now he's got to regroup and try again before the end of this stage. Only a few laps left.
Yeah, and as we progress into this long run, I mentioned earlier in the broadcast that when the tires start to wear out and you really don't have as much grip on the race car, that bottom line, and especially the lower lines, especially more notable in 3 and 4 than 1 and 2, they are less favorable. You really can't run the bottom without losing speed to drivers on the outside on this longer run as the tires wear out. We saw Cameron Stone trying to take that opportunity. Felt like he felt it was needed to go to the inside of Zach Probst and take that spot away. Unfortunately, he was not able to do so, but he really hasn't lost any ground, so he can hit the reset button. Try one more time before the stage end at lap number 115 and get an extra point off of that one position and to sit on the podium spot starting going down pit road as soon as the yellow comes out. We were talking about Matthew Woods, who I think the last time we talked about him past Preston McRae was further back in the top 10. He has picked himself all the way up to the inside of this top 5. An impressive run by that 48 of Matthew Woods, one of the drivers that we probably expected to take over the lead at Watkins Glen a couple weeks back, where he was close to the win and unfortunately fell short. But Matthew Woods, he has picked up a lot on this longer green flag run. I think he's positioning himself in the best way possible right now. He's got a quick race car.
A lot of damage on the front of that 48 Matthew Woods machine, and yet he's still absolutely flying, turning laps comparable to the leader. So if he's that fast with damage, I would be terrified to see what he could do with a completely fresh car. He is on the hunt, and I think as the night progresses, his car is only going to get better. It seems like as this temperature has dropped, his lap times have also dropped. So look for him later on, especially with the stage caution, getting him closer to that lead pack. We're going to bunch him all up. He's going to be right there with the leaders, and he's going to have an opportunity to try and make something happen. So definitely watch out for that later on.
We've approached 5 laps to go in the stage. Bryson Hixenbaugh has a 2.8 second lead over Jonathan Delaney, and it has slowed down dramatically. We saw it at 5.5 seconds early in this run, now down to 2.8, and the night is falling. There's really no more sunset on the back straightaway, as you saw there with the onboard of Cameron Stone. There's not much sun in the way, so that's going to come out of factor, and that won't be a factor into how you play this race out. And the track will continue to get cooler as we get further into this race. So it is going to affect dramatically how these cars handle. And like we have talked about a couple of times, Andre, the drivers on the nighttime setup and the drivers that will flourish will start to appear out of nowhere pretty much, unless if they're further back. So that's going to be something to watch for right now. Hixenbaugh approaching lap 114 to 115. He's looking to get a stage 1 win tonight as Probst and Cameron Stone continue to do battle for P3.
Yeah, we were riding on board with Cameron Stone there for a few laps, and I think that was a good way of showing the different lines some of these guys are running, as well as the difference in the setup. Cameron Stone seemed like he was able to get a lot more speed on entry than he lost that on exit to that 162. So perhaps that 162, Zach Probst has set his car up to be faster on exit, which sometimes is the call, because if you're faster on exit, you're carrying that extra speed, whether it's just a few miles an hour, 3-4 miles an hour, you're carrying that all the way down the straightaway, which is a massive improvement, a massive help. So sometimes it's better to be out of the corner than it is in. The problem with being slow into the corner is that it makes it harder to defend. So if somebody can sail it in a little bit deeper than you, they might get to your inside or your outside, and there's not much you can do about it, and you just have to hope that you can get that position back on exit. But the leader right now, Bryson Hixenbaugh, working his way around another lapped car, coming to the end of this stage. The stage is going to end once the top 10 have crossed the line, but Hixenbaugh is going to win stage 1.
Hixenbaugh takes stage 1, and Jonathan Delaney was 0.7 seconds behind him as they were crossing the line. He was right behind the lap car of Randy Drumhiller, who just unfortunately went a lap down right as the caution flag came out. Hopefully going to get that free pass and get back on the lead lap, sitting P13. Now the yellow comes out, so stage 1 has concluded, and Bryson Hixenbaugh will be the winner. He has won in real races 11 times this season, but those stage wins continue to stack up for him on what has been a dominant season for that 63. He has had no contention whatsoever. So they'll line them all up. The caution flag is out, so they'll re-rack, and hopefully all the drivers going to go down pit road as they catch the pace car.
Yep, they're heading down pit road. They're going to get 4 fresh Goodyears and some fuel. Try and get that thing topped off and ready to go as far as they got to go in stage 2. And I tell you, Mr. Hixenbaugh, he's starting off his playoffs the way he ran his entire season, with absolute domination. You know what these other guys are thinking? Dang it. Because they were hoping that coming into this playoffs, it's a brand new, fresh start. Maybe they're going to have something. Maybe things are going to change. But nope, it's still that 63 becoming a speck in their windshield so far. But it's a long night. The race isn't over. Leading early on doesn't mean you're going to win the race by any means. Anything could happen, especially at a track like Darlington. And I think that's what a lot of these guys are banking on if they don't have the raw setup or the speed through the corners. So it's going to be interesting. But coming down pit road, everybody's going to file down The only car staying out are the ones trying to either get the wave around or the cars that cannot pit yet because they're not on the lead lap. Bryson Hixenbaugh with a good pit road entry, as with Delaney. Pretty solid. Actually, a very fast pit road entry by Jonathan Delaney. Very impressive. Eric Wineland now into his stall. And behind them, getting the tires changed. Looks like somebody's already on their way out. But Hixenbaugh going to maintain his lead coming out of the pits. Nobody even close. The 162 with a really fast pit stop. So that's going to put Zach Probst up into P2. Impressive stop. I'm not sure if some strategy played out. Maybe he took 2 tires. That'd be a little bit crazy. Or maybe he just got a really great entry. Who knows? But we're filing back onto the track. And now the cars that are a lap down are coming down pit road. But Kenneth, how about we have a word with our Stage 1 winner, Bryson Hixenbaugh?
We're going to bring him in, and the Stage 1 winner driver has won 11 times today, setting his playoff tone in the perfect way. Going to bring him into the booth. And Bryson, first of all, welcome to the 3Y TV booth. You got a copy with us, first of all?
Yes, I do.
All right, Bryson, you pretty much went through this first stage of flying colors, really no contention for anyone. You're just all the way smooth sailing in P1 at the moment. You led pretty much every lap so far since the drop of the green flag. What has been the best part about this Stage 1, at least for the most part right now? What has been the key factor that has really allowed you to stay up front and consistently run times around you?
It's just about being smooth here. Stage 1, everybody's been taking it easy. So you're just clicking off laps here, running consistent lap times. Lap cars have all been really nice and haven't held me up much. So it's been great running out front here.
And now coming into Stage 2, you finish this one up, get the caution flag. I know that you've been great with the restart so far. Going into Stage 2, what kind of factors are you looking for now that the nighttime is starting to come up and the track's getting cooler?
It's going to be keeping up with the track changes. The track tends to get a little bit looser here in the night, so you'll make some adjustments to not lose the rear end going into turn 1 or coming out of turn 4. And then it'll just be picking up the pace a little bit, getting a little bit riskier with your line in 3 and 4, and picking up more speed that's out there.
All right, Bryson. Well, we wish you luck going into the rest of this stage. I know you've been at the front of this field and commanding it for the most part, but we hope to see you at least running more laps up here at Darlington, and we wish you luck in the next stage.
All right, thank you.
Bryson Hixenbaugh, Stage 1 winner, coming out of pit road first, so he will lead them back to green. Andre, we've seen a good portion of this race. We're now 120 laps in. We got the caution, of course, at lap 115. Getting to at least the midway portion of this race. What has been the notable factor for you? What has kind of stood out amongst the rest of the field here, at least in Darlington so far?
Well, I'm a little surprised how patient these guys have been. We've seen a lot of single file racing. I know you've mentioned it quite a few times. It seems like once they get into their rhythm, once the stage progresses, these guys just kind of fall into line. They're not making too many aggressive moves. And I guess there's really 2 ways you could look at it. You know, going into the beginning of the playoff, you think, I got to make some aggressive moves. I got to make a statement right here, right now, come out of the gate swinging. Or you look at it from the other perspective and you say, you know what? It's the start of the playoffs. There's no point in screwing up early. There's no point in making any mistakes now. Let's just take it easy until things have settled themselves out and we've got everything figured out. So it seems like that's what most drivers have chosen to do. They're taking it easy, driving incredibly smart. I mean, obviously, the drivers in this league are fantastic. They always put on a good show. I'm not saying they're not always smart, but it seems like they are excessively patient this week. And that is an interesting trait to see, especially at a race like Darlington. So the lights are off on the pace car. We're getting ready to rack them and stack them, Ken, and we're headed into Stage 2.
Bryson Hixenbaugh in that stage interview, he said he was going to start to, at least the rest of this race in a Stage 2, was kind of picking in lines and kind of choosing different lines, kind of change up things. Well, he has changed up things on this restart. He's going to start on the outside of row 1 as opposed to being on the inside every single time. So maybe a little more experimentation for the 63. Although regardless of what line he's ran in and what line he's chosen, he's always been able to get a great start nonetheless, and he's always been clear of the rest of this field as soon as he reaches turn 1. It's always been the battle for second that has always brewed up into turn 1. It's always the drivers that usually start second. Maybe they don't have the best run, and it's always allowed for the driver a little bit further back in the next row to pick up a spot from there. And you've usually seen a lot of drivers gain spots from there. Nonetheless, on a restart, lap number 122, Bryson Ixenbaugh, another large start. He's going to stretch out his lead. Zach Probst, no contention, though, going to be in second as they fight for third a little bit further behind.
You know, I'm noticing a pattern here, Ken. It seems like nobody knows what Bryson is going to do on these restarts, because on the initial start, he got on the pedal pretty much as soon as the game would allow him to. And then on that last caution, he waited till he was out of the corner. Now this restart, he got on the pedal real early, still in the corner when he stepped on the pedal. So when you do that and you change up your strategy, you do something different every time, you're putting that element of doubt in the other driver's mind. They don't know what you're going to do. Are you going to get on it early? You're going to get on it late? And that's exactly what you want to see. You want these drivers to be caught unprepared as you step on the throttle and hopefully give yourself a gap between you and the guy behind. But right now, Zach Probst not letting Bryson run away with it. He is still on the hunt. He's had a great car all night up into P2. We're taking a look on board now behind. That's Preston McRae. We're looking behind him. He's got a car challenging right up against the bumper. You're going to see a lot of this close battling action at the beginning of these stages after you get him punched up. Maybe a little bit of a tap there going into the corner from Wineland. Wineland now side drafting him into the corner, and around Wineland goes. Is he going to be able to complete the maneuver? Yes, he is. He's going to slide up, and he is now clear right up into position number 8.
And Preston McRae allows the door to open for the 09 of Hickenbottom as well, and possibly Brian Mabry in the 3 car. So a lot more drivers trying to get back, as Mabry got a little bit loose, so he's going to try and fight those spots away. But we still got the top 4 within a blanket, at least through the rest of this field. Hickenbottom, though, has gapped Probst considerably, but Probst will possibly be under charge from Delaney and Matthew Woods. This is the first time that Matthew Woods has kind of been at least re-racked with these guys up front. He was sitting P5 on that last run right before the stage conclusion, and as the field was very spread out, he really didn't have much time to gain. There was not much draft to get off the drivers in front, but now it's a different opportunity for that 48 to be able to get the draft on the drivers in front and possibly pounce. But right now he has fallen back a little bit. Now Cameron Stone will try to get into this top 5, and he's been doing so all night. But now Ryan Samuelson, who we haven't seen all night, and Jack Durham going to fight for 6 and 7.
I'll tell you what, Ken, this is getting pretty squirrely. Cam Stone trying to make the pass on the high side. We saw John Delaney do that exact move earlier on in the race, and now Cameron Stone's going to mirror that move, securing the pass on the 48, as he's going to now bring Ryan Samuelson in that 60 machine in tow. So that is 2 positions that Woods has lost. Seems like early on his car maybe isn't quite there. We noticed he had a lot of speed at the end of that first stage, so perhaps that's confirmation that the 48 car has that long run setup, now being challenged by the 216 machine. That is, let's see, Jack Durham. I apologize. Jack Durham now on the attack of that 48, moving to the bottom, but no, Wineland now progressing through the field as he's done all night long. It's been a long and treacherous charge back to the front. It's taken him some time all the way up to lap 128, but now he is up into P7, working on Woods for that number 6 position, and ahead of him, he's got his eyes on the top 5.
And right there, you see those 2 drivers, Wineland and Woods, the 2 differing setups on those cars and how drastically different they are. We're seeing Woods fall to the field in this early run because you mentioned he had a lot of speed, and he's actually blown his motor coming off of turn number 2. I saw smoke coming out of the back of that 48 machine, and he is now considerably so with smoke out of the back of that car. Not sure what might have happened there. Maybe the damage might have had something to do with it, but it hasn't really affected him all race. I'm not sure what did it this time. This was coming into turn 2, and you see right there the engine just blows on him, and then he has to make way. Of course, a very easy maneuver. Luckily, he was able to get out of the way sooner than later. This is on board. This is after he got passed by Wineland. This is coming into turn 1 and 2, and then you hear the engine just blow up right here in the middle of the corner.
Yeah, when we saw the 48 off pace, we thought maybe he just has a long run setup, but it appears there were greater machinations at play there. It seems his radiator was starting to give way. We mentioned earlier that front end damage is not something you want to have in this simulator. The radiator is very fragile, and now, from the perspective of the 216, Jack Durham right behind him, who had a 217, he's got a front row seat as the 48 slides down right in front of him, just getting clear, making sure nobody else gets involved. If he had not swerved down, that could have been a huge pileup, but luckily quick thinking on the part of the 48 to immediately get off the track. And, you know, when that happens to you, when your engine blows and you're trying to get everything you can out of the car, maybe you're not always thinking about, okay, how do I protect the people around me? You think, God dang it, and you're thinking about yourself. But the 48, quick thinking to get off the track and make sure that nobody else was involved when that engine gave way.
Yeah, perfect move for him to swing out of the way the best he could. And luckily, he did not involve anyone else in the process, including Jack Durham. It was very close, but he made the decision early as soon as it blew up to go all the way down the racetrack and try to go all the way down to pit road where he is at the moment. So he will try to fight a battle through the rest of this race. Not sure whether he'll be able to get back up through this field. Doesn't look too good right now for the driver of that 48 and the 48 car itself. Meanwhile, we saw Delaney. I think we don't see Delaney really catching ground at the moment. He was there with Zach Probst, but ever since they've all spread out within each other. It was first Bryson Hickenbaugh to get the gun, and he was all the way up further. He already spread his lead to about 1.6 seconds now. We saw him gap the rest of those guys in that 3-car pack. Then we saw Matthew Woods falling out as he was slower on this short run. Then we see Zach Probst slowly gapping with Jonathan Delaney. So they are now at a considerable gap between them two. And then Cameron Stone, who got by, he is now just about a second behind, 1.3 seconds at the last time, still at the line on lap 135. So lots of drivers spreading out early. And you talked about, as soon as we were under yellow, the patience that these drivers have. It's probably still playing into effect. I know that it's now into the second stage. You're going to have a feeling of what your car is like. And of course, you still have to adapt to the track and such. But as soon as you got that good feeling in your car, you have at least a comfortable sense of what you have behind the wheel. Then you know where to push it, where to try to lay back a little more. And that allows for a lot of drivers to spread out amongst each other, maybe not trying to choose fighting early for position. They want to choose fighting later, trying to think about what they're doing later in the strategy. And if you're a playoff driver, it's probably the perfect way you got to do it.
Absolutely. It seems like John Delaney is struggling with consistency. If he scrapes the wall right there a little bit, sparks flying, getting another Darlington stripe. Back on lap 133, he was actually 1,000th of a second faster than Hickenbaugh and almost a 10th faster than Zach Probst ahead of him. But then after that, for these last few laps, he's been consistently a 10th or 2 off the cars ahead. So maybe a bit of a consistency struggle with that setup. Maybe not the most stable car he's ever driven. And when you have a car that's not consistent, when you have a car that's not stable, it's difficult to fight through. It's difficult to predict what that car is going to do. So John Delaney probably just trying to get this thing figured out and hoping that as the track cools down and he gets more grip, it's going to settle itself out. But like Bryson Hickenbaugh said, the track actually gets a little bit looser. Obviously, you get more rotation. The car is easier to turn, but sometimes too much rotation is just too much, and the car can start to feel a little bit too free. You get to the corner, and you feel that rear end kick out and try to spin you out, and you kind of got to really wheel that thing and hold on to the wheel and make sure that you keep it straight. But right now, John Delaney, once again, scraping the wall in that corner a little bit. Right now, we're looking at the 53 car. I know we got some 53 fans in chat. He's doing pretty well for himself right now, up in P8. Anytime you're in the top 10 is a good time here in this league, and he is fighting right now to try and get up into P7, fighting with the 09 Damaris Hickenbottom as they make their way around this circuit. Not making it easy for him, definitely on the charge, trying to take that position and maybe go ahead and crack that top 7.
And those two are playoff drivers, so any points between them two make more impact than anything. One more point ahead of Damaris Hickenbottom is a point nonetheless, and it's a point to your benefit. So that's something that Preston might be thinking about as he's approaching the back bumper of that 09. But going back to Jonathan Delaney and the setup he's running with right now, we've seen him fight a loose race car all night long. We caught a couple of moments where he was loose in the corner, where he had to try and wrap that race car back around in order to prevent it from going around. So Delaney has been with this issue all night long, and it continues to play to his harm. He's been struggling with it all night long, and that's probably the reason why he's been a little slower, that he hasn't been as quick as right now, especially in this run. Still fighting that loose race car, and on the fresh tires, when you have all that grip, you can easily over try and try to make your moves. Try to push the steering wheel a little more because you have the grip, and then maybe you kind of do it a little too much, and then the car can start to step out, and that's where you can start to wear your tires down even further. But Delaney, we saw him fall a little bit back, but he's all the way caught up to Zach Probst now. So he is now gaining speed as this run progresses, and maybe fighting that loose race car, somewhat of a temporary deficit to that 6th car, and then as soon as he gets under control of it, further down the run, and as the tires wear, he's able to be a lot quicker. And now he's just got by Zach Probst to move the 6 into second place.
I was listening into the number 6 team's radio there, and he thanked the 162 when he got around him. So maybe Zach Probst conserving, trying to stretch this run out as far as he can get it, save those tires, save the fuel, because his lap times did drop off. I mean, Delaney ran a 29.4 and then a 29.5. Meanwhile, Probst ran a 30 flat last time around. So we know Probst has had speed. We know he's been faster on this track. The only reason I can think of for him to drop that far off pace is that he's conserving. So maybe fuel mileage playing into this stage, Ken.
That's a great point. We're going all the way to lap 230 in stage 2. We're now at lap 144. So a long way to go. And we've had the yellows, fortunately, in the middle of these longer runs. We haven't really seen a long run where green flag pit stops was necessary. But at that point, we've already seen a semi-long run. We saw yellow come out. And then obviously that throws the whole long green flag strategy out of the way because you won't have to conserve. You can go down pit road along with the rest of the field like they have been doing following Bryson Nixonball. They've been able to get their fresh tires and fuel, go along their way, and continue feeling comfortable in their tire sets and at least in their fuel situation that they won't have to worry about going to the end of the stage. But if we're staying green this entire time around, that's probably what a lot of these drivers are starting to think about. Does the long green flag and green flag pit stops come to mind? Is there something that you have to kind of keep in question? Because we've seen drivers spread out. Now that the drivers are more comfortable with their race cars, we probably won't see a lot of drivers getting into incidents as much, and we probably won't see a lot of drivers into trouble unless they're battling with other drivers, but that's a whole different conversation. You might want to start thinking about saving, but we've got a 3-car train right now between Delaney, Probst, and Stone. They're all within each other. Now Stone's going to look to the inside for third.
Cameron Stone making the move on the bottom. We saw him try to do this at the end of the previous stage, and right now it played out just like the last time. He sent it in on the bottom, and unfortunately, the grip just wasn't there. He had to back off the throttle, now losing nearly 2 car lengths to Zach Probst. And this 3-car train, I think, is kind of taking it easy, except for Cameron Stone. It seems like Cam Stone is the only one anxious to make a move. Maybe he doesn't think that saving is really worth it, but you talked about does their mindset change as the stage goes on? And I think it does. I think every driver sort of has a rough idea as to how likely a caution is. And at the beginning of the stage, when everybody's bunched up and close together, you think, okay, maybe there's about a 60 to 70% chance we're going to get a caution relatively soon. But as the stage goes on and everybody gets more separated, you think, okay, now there's like a 20% chance we're going to get a caution. And if that's the case, it might be best for me to try and conserve and make this a one-stop stage as opposed to 2. So definitely, I think their minds can change as the stage goes on, like you mentioned. And right now, whoa! 162 goes around, backed it into the wall. Cameron Stone involved.
Huge crash involving the 162 of Probst, got right around in the front of Cameron Stone. Delaney also has damage. In the meantime, we'll take a replay. This was a very odd situation. These 3 were all within each other. And I believe this was in at 3 and 4. This is Delaney getting into the wall, slowing up the 162. Then they pretty much sandwiched him in the middle, and then he got sent around into 3 and 4. And the 42 is also around. That's Josh Coppernall. And the 57 of Cameron Stone is into the inside wall. Still more development happening after the yellow. And huge contact there, Andre. I don't even know what happened.
That's a hard one to gather up. Cameron Stone getting involved in a wreck after the wreck under yellow. We're going to take a look at a replay and hopefully identify what on earth just transpired, because I'm about as confused as the spectators are at this point, Ken.
This was after the yellow. Here is actually,
Whoa.
this is getting out of the way of Josh Coppernall, who went around. I saw him go around, but I didn't think they were so close to him. This is the 42 of Coppernall. This is on the back straightaway, and I really don't know what happened here.
What on earth? He just spun to the right. I mean, it looked like something broke on that car, like an axle just dropped, and then Cameron Stone nowhere to go. He didn't expect a guy to just be sitting there. That's a strange situation, Ken. We're riding on board now with Josh Coppernall. Let's see what happened to cause this car to veer right. It looks like he shifted, Ken. He downshifted, and that sent the car around. What an unfortunate mistake that cost a couple of playoff drivers possibly their whole night after some strong runs.
Oh man, and those were 3 of the strongest drivers apart from Higginball that we've seen all night long. This is in car from Cameron Stone. Delaney had to swerve. He was able to get by, but then Stone just doesn't know where to go, whether to go to the inside or the outside. And then by that time, just trying to swerve to the left, it is way too late. And then he got back at Coppernoll by spinning around and getting contact with him. So tensions flaring here at Darlington, and a very odd development. This is another look here. And I think the shifting was just spinning the tires on that instant. He went down to first, and then the revs are higher, probably trying to slow down. This is contact between him and Coppernoll, just trying to get back at him. And then the 217 and the 31 get into contact. So what is going on here at Darlington Raceway? We've got multiple cars with damage, multiple situations happening, and it all happened here on the back straightaway.
I have never seen anything like this. The closest thing I could compare this to is Jeff Burton and Jeff Gordon with their incident after the yellow flag is blown. But the 31 getting involved in that late, I mean, everybody was pretty much sorted out when the 31 got involved. So luckily, not too much damage. So he's going to be able to power on through that. Not a luxury that drivers like Cameron Stone are going to have, as I believe Cameron Stone is still sitting on pit road, either trying to repair the damage or just straight up giving up after acquiring all that damage. Probably getting a tow off the racetrack as well. So that timer counting down for Cameron Stone. But man, what a crazy, crazy event. I mean, it was crazy enough that we had the lead pack get involved in an accident like that. We didn't see that one coming at all. But then all of this after the yellow, that is absolutely wild. Right now, they are still trying to get everything sorted out, pacing around the track. Bryson Hixenbaugh still in the lead. Looks like right now, Eric Wineland is going to inherit second position. I'm not sure if that's going to stand. I believe that should be his actual starting position. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Ken. But if he is starting P2, that is a strong comeback. We've watched him race his way through the field all night long, making his way through the traffic, trying to get back up front after that incident early on pit road, potentially acquiring a penalty is what we believe happened there. So if he's starting on the front row, we could have a battle between the 63 and the 31, two very strong drivers, Ken.
Yeah, we haven't seen them close together this entire race, so this could be the opportunity for Wineland to get up to the race lead and possibly get a lead change in this race and be the first one to do so and get around Hixenbaugh. But he will be second on the racetrack right now off of pit road. Randy Drumhiller into third, and look at all these drivers, at least in this mix, or at least Drumhiller goes down pit road, but we're seeing a lot of drivers, at least in this mix now, that we really haven't seen all night. Ryan Samuelson is here. Jonathan Delaney is still here, although he has the damage to the rear end. He got the least amount of damage from that incident. He was the driver that hit the wall initially. He was able to get that fixed. He will start into fourth on the outside of row number 2. Hickenbottom is still in the picture as well. Preston McRae is also here. They've also been drivers in the latter half of the top 10. They've been fighting for position numerous times. They're staying up here as well. And Zach Probst leaving what's left of that race car and the front end completely torn off. He's going to start 8th on this restart. And then Princeton, Mabry, Jack Durham, Cody Bird, all the way further back. Cody Bird is the first driver, 1 lap down. And as we were saying, we were really not expecting it. We were in that conversation of green flag pit stops. That's obviously thrown out of the window for now. Still opportunity for it to happen, but very odd instance between the caution. We were talking about that and how the yellows could potentially not be there, and we'll have green flag pit stops along the way. That is completely that is a conversation we can't have at the moment. We'll probably be able to have it later through the third stage, but I think we'll be having to wait on that for now. Meanwhile, pace car is down on pit road. We'll have a restart on lap number 154 between Bryson Hixenbaugh and Eric Wineland. Once again, Hixenbaugh gets a different part of the track to step on the gas pedal, so he will throw the rest of the field off guard. He'll easily stretch out to an early lead as Wineland and a couple of guys now will start to spread out, at least single file right now, no two wide action.
You know, Ken, I feel like we've had the same top 3, top 4 all night long, and we kind of knew what everybody's pace was and where everybody stood, but now all of that has thrown that out the window. The only consistent factor we have here is that Bryson Hixenbaugh is still in the lead, but we have the 31 car now back up the track. He's going to keep it on the apron just barely. I was going to say Wineland's the wild card. We don't know what his car has. Can he challenge the leader? And just as I'm about to say that, his car gets squirrely on him, and now, just as he clawed his way back to the front of the field, he's going to have to do it all over again. After one simple mistake coming out of the corner was enough to get him back to the back of the field once more. Unfortunate for Eric Wineland.
that's going to wear his tires out. But a phenomenal job for him to save that race car. He could have easily gone back up into the rest of this field. Here's the in-car cam. This was in the 3 and 4. There's where the car just snaps loose, and at that point, it's a point of no return. Almost looped it back into the rest of the field, but luckily was able to smash on that brake pedal and lock the car up to the point where he can stabilize the car trying to spin out, and he was able to keep the car straight. But he's going to lose a lot of ground, and there's no yellow flag, so there's no weight up for that 31 at Wyland. He will fall back into a hole where he was earlier in this race. But meanwhile, Ryan Samuelson, who we haven't talked about all night, is slowly catching up to the back bumper of that number 6 car, possibly being a contention for second, where we really haven't seen him all that much.
Ryan Samuelson, not a playoff driver, so he's thinking to himself, hey, I got nothing to lose here. And he's making a charge now in the top 3, running down Delaney. We know that Delaney has been fast, but not quite consistent. His car's jumped out on him a few times. He's had some brushes with the wall, been in a 4-round knockout match with that outside wall all night long. So Ryan Samuelson may be just waiting for that next mistake to present itself to try and get up into P2. From there, Bryson Hixenbaugh has quite a bit of a lead over these guys, but if we were to get another yellow, that puts Ryan Samuelson on the front row for that restarting position. That is a prime spot to try and make something happen and possibly lead some laps. And I'll tell you what, Samuelson's lap times do not lie. Last time around, he ran a 27.8. John Delaney ran a 27.9, a tenth slower. Bryson Hixenbaugh ran a 27.6, which is faster, but he's not in traffic. He's not following anybody. So who knows what kind of pace Samuelson might have if he gets around that 6 and he's got that clean air in front of him, Ken.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just Samuelson, if he's able to get by to clean air up until Hixenbaugh, who knows if he's able to gain more than what we've pretty much seen from some of the other drivers in second that have gained up to Hixenbaugh. But he's got a little fighting to do with Hickenbottom and Preston McRae before he gets up to Delaney, though. I saw him fall back just a little bit, and he's going to let by a Damaris and Preston McRae by, so he's going to let them by a slip back to 5th, and he's gonna try to hold his own, I think, now. We saw this with Zach Probst early in the race, so probably just a conservative strategy right now. I'll let you guys, just kind of a signal of I'll let you guys push now. I'll be there later. Don't worry. I'm just conserving myself right now. Probably the mindset in behind that 16 car.
Absolutely. Just worried about himself, conserving his car, and taking it easy, I think, is probably the best strategy, especially when we don't really know what's going to happen here. We've had some really long green flag runs, but we've also had a fair number of cautions, so it seems like nobody really knows what's going to happen in this race. And at that point, maybe taking it easy and worrying about yourself is the best way to go about it. It's Bryson Hixenbaugh he's got a fair amount of a lead, so it's not like charging right now is really going to do a whole lot. And I think conserving is the best strategy. But we got a 3-car train here with the 216, the number 5, that's Alex Princeton, and then, whoa, almost a little bit of contact there as they come out of the corner. That was a 3-car, Brian Mabry making the evasive maneuver to get around the 216 machine, Zach Probst, and that's going to put a little bit of separation between the 5 and the 3, which is probably what the 5-car wanted to see. But now another lapped car ahead of Princeton, I believe that's going to be Cameron Stone, and they're going to be dealing with him real shortly here. So a lot of traffic to deal with, a lot of close action further back in the field, Ken.
Yeah, there's Kevin Steele there in the 44, so Princeton will try to get around him in order to pursue the number 217 of Jack Durham. And Kevin Steele right now just running his race and still 2 laps down. Ever since we had him in that first incident, he went down 2 laps. I said it probably was a place where he can get out of. It's been a little bleak for him in the terms that there have been other drivers put a lap down, so it's kind of hurt his chances of getting his laps back on the racetrack. But nonetheless, he's still sitting 14th. He's currently the only driver 2 laps down. He's only got Cody Bird and Dave Fuga ahead of them, which are 1 lap down. Fuga's in this battle right now, right behind Brian Mabry in the 3-car. And then Eric Wineland, actually, no, not Eric Wineland, Cody Bird in the 64, who's a little bit further back right now in battle with Eric Wineland. But we still have a lot of drivers in the mix, and I think most notably we have a 3-car train still following behind Delaney ever since Wineland got loose of that race car, and he was able to save it. That allowed the 09 of Hickenbottom and the 53 of Preston McRae to start catching up to Delaney. So they're working in tandem, trying to get up to the 2nd place car, gain some positions along the way. Top 4 right now, actually top 5 actually right now. Top 5 are all playoff drivers. They all have the red spoiler and the red banner at the top. It's obviously Higginball, Delaney, Hickenbottom, McRae, and Samuelson. All 5 of them playoff drivers in this top 5. We had 6 drivers start in the top 6 playoff drivers to start this race. It's still contending with playoff drivers being the most dominant at the moment.
Absolutely, and I would like to issue a correction. I do apologize. Samuelson is a playoff driver. I said that he wasn't earlier on. He's not blue on the graphic. We're working on that, and we apologize. But he does have that red spoiler, so maybe some of you keen-eyed viewers at home were a little bit smarter than even the commentator here that messed up. So I do apologize. But yeah, you mentioned the playoff drivers are the dominant ones, and they have been all night long. Really only a few wild cards so far. A lot of separation between the leader and the cars behind, but between Samuelson and Durham and these guys, the separation is not quite as much. You get one lap car thrown in the fray that holds one of them up by just a little bit, and these guys are going to be right on each other. So definitely could have some battles brewing behind the leader of Bryson Hixenbaugh as they make their way around this tricky track, Ken.
And as we were talking about battling, Preston McRae just got around Demarius Hickenbottom, so Preston McRae will slide into the top 3 for the first time this evening, and he's been doing battle with the 09 for pretty much this entire race. I think them two have been the closest to each other almost all race long, apart from maybe you say Delaney and Hixenbaugh and possibly Cameron Stone and Zach Probst. They've all been within range of each other for most of this race, but Preston McRae and Hickenbottom have been within each other. I think just 1-2 every position they've been, at least one position away from each other. They've been so close all race long, and they've been able to keep themselves stable, and especially with those incidents with Zach Probst and there with Eric Wineland, with Matthew Woods, lots of drivers being taken out and lots of drivers being separated from the rest of the field, at least falling through back. We have those drivers like Hickenbottom, like McRae, that are able to gain spots along the way and are just kind of smooth sailing, getting by those wrecks, getting by those incidents, and gaining spots, which inevitably gains you points for the most part. Remember, we're still talking about a points battle here, Andre. It's the first race, and you're setting the tone. Why not set the tone by gaining points, especially when you have drivers in trouble and drivers that are playoff drivers in front of you getting in trouble? It's the best situation you are in, and just kind of running your race and just getting points along the way.
Absolutely, and the points picture has been shaken up quite a bit in the first half of this race. I mean, Cameron Stone was a driver, they called him the chosen one in the intro because he's the one that everybody thought was going to be able to dethrone Bryson Hixenbaugh from his domination this season. Unfortunately, a string of bad races did not end tonight. Another bad incident that he got caught up in. So the bad luck continues for Cameron Stone. He's actually made his way back on the track just recently, but he's going to bring it around on the apron and possibly right back down to the pits. He's going to stay on the track. He was just letting some cars go. But so with Cameron Stone having this bad run tonight and losing out on some points, that opens the window to some of these guys closer to the bubble. I don't think anybody really expected Cameron to have something like that happen. So now the whole picture's changed. And Cameron's not the only playoff driver that's had issues, as we've seen. So as you can see right now, this is the current playoff standings as they are. And that's a little bit different than what we were expecting, Ken.
Yeah, and most notably, Preston McRae is 1 point behind Eric Wineland going into the race. So this is when the race started. This is after Daytona. So he is getting points at the moment. He, especially 1 point, one position. He is many positions above Eric Wineland right now after that incident. Wineland sitting 10th, Preston McRae sitting 3rd. 7 spots, 7 points. That continues to do a lot of benefit for that 53. And also, another thing I did not mention, Kevin Steele was up there as well, so Kevin Steele was losing points in the process. McRae can gain a lot out of this, especially also Hickenbottom. Those two can gain a lot of this right now as they continue to spread apart. McRae continues to fend with Delaney. The gap really hasn't grown, but Delaney now just 4.9 seconds, almost 5 from your race leader, Hixenbaugh. You got a battle between Princeton and Wineland all together. This is for tonight.
You mentioned McRae, and he is really the biggest winner so far, not to jinx him by any means, but he gridded 25th at the start of this race, now worked his way up into P3 in that 53 Pepsi machine, and he's done a good job of keeping his nose clean, staying out of the wrecks, avoiding all of these people's incidents, And with that, he's going to gain a lot of points and get himself further away from being on that bubble, which is exactly what he was hoping to do coming in. So a great run by Preston McRae, and now we're on board with Eric Wineland as he battles it out with the car ahead. That is going to be quite a, whoa, almost descent going into the corner. Looks like he got on the brakes a little early, and now into the wall. The car ahead, down to the bottom. He makes the pass. That's the 30 car of, let's see, Randy Drumhiller. I apologize. So Drumhiller with a slight mistake in the corner, and that's going to give Wineland the position. And what a close call that was. When you see somebody get in the wall ahead of you, you know, that's not always a guaranteed thing to get around them at this track. We saw what happened when John Delaney, Durham in the 217, now into the wall. Another mistake. It seems like these cars are going away from these drivers. They're just starting to lose them as the track gets cool. You know, Bryson Nixonbaum mentioned the track getting cooler and the cars getting looser. It seems like that's what's happening here, Ken.
Yeah, it seems to be the case. We're seeing a lot of single car incidents where drivers are either getting into the wall, getting loose, or what have you. Because earlier in the race, or at least a couple laps earlier, I saw the 16 of Samuelson get loose, and he almost lost the race car off turn 2. And luckily, he was able to keep it straight and save the race car from going around. But we're seeing drivers struggle and have their own fights with their own cars. It's not just them working around drivers around them and trying to get up positions and gain points. They're not just doing battle with them. They're not just fighting them. They're fighting their own cars right now. They're trying to make sure those cars are straight while also being fast. And that is tough to do at a track like this where driver skill is so important. And you have two different ends of the racetrack. One where you
Cody Bird
put a
into
lot
the wall.
more gas. You can be more momentum based as one car is into the wall. You're looking at the 64 of Cody Bird. But like I was saying, turn 1 and 2 is more momentum based. You have a lot more time on the throttle, and it's more about kind of swinging your car around up the track and then back down to get the exit on 2. And then you have to go to the drastically different turns 3 and 4 where you have to swing all the way to the top and slow the car more. You have to put in more brake, and then you have to, kind of swing your car to the outside rather than losing time on the inside. And you have to stay all the way to the outside wall until you get to the front straightaway where you got to do it all over again. So you have a different challenge each time around, and it's not helping the cars. It's unsettling these cars, and the drivers are really working their way around. Meanwhile, Eric Wineland, we talked about him as he got around Randy Drumhiller, who struck the wall. He went from 10th the last time we discussed about him. He's all the way up to 7th. So he's now catching Brian Mabry in the 3 car, and the points between him and McRae, I think, gained, starting to grow a little shorter now.
Absolutely, but what a story it would be for Eric Wineland if he was able to race his way up through the field not once but twice and either get a podium position or potentially a win. It seems like he's got a lot of speed, working his way through the field multiple times now, proving that the car is there when he can keep it underneath of him. So he is progressing to charge through the field, catching up to Brian Mabry now, only a 0.4 of a second gap between them as they make their way through the corner. And further up front, the gap is extending. I mean, we got John Delaney 5.6 seconds back. Preston McRae in third, about a second behind Delaney even. So I think that picture is going to remain the same for a little while here, unless some lap traffic gets involved. But further back, we do have some close battles, especially with Eric Wineland charging through like he is.
Sunsetting a lap 183, the 367 laps set to take place here at Darlington Raceway. The lights are on, the sun is coming down, and the moon is starting to rise. And as we have reached the halfway portion of this race, it's a good time to go through the field and see where everybody is at the moment. Starting with your race leader and playoff leader right now, Bryson Hixenbaugh has had no contention at the moment. He has been pretty much the dominant car all night long, and he really has no fights with anyone. His lowest position is first. He really has not fallen out of any positions this entire race long, and currently in a perfect situation to capture a win in the playoffs and further maximize his points lead going into Richmond next week and the next round further through. He's having a great race, Andre.
Currently in second position behind the leader. Sorry about that, little bit of connection issue. Behind him, it's Preston McRae in second place. We've talked about what a great run he's having tonight, avoiding a lot of incidents, keeping his nose clean, getting a consistent run, and it has definitely been rewarded for him tonight as he's up in that podium position, P2.
If there's really anyone that's fighting their race car at the moment, it is Jonathan Delaney. We've spoken about him a couple times through this race, fighting a loose race car, but he's been able to keep it stable. He's been highest up to second, was closest to Bryson Nixon-Ball at the end of stage 1. It was 0.7 seconds as they were crossing the finish line in stage 1. But ever since, he has been still struggling in some form or way. He has been kind of falling a little bit some positions. You saw that incident between him and Probst and the 31 of Wineland. No, Cameron Stone in the 57, excuse me, where those drivers were all together, and he has been striking the wall a couple of times around this racetrack and really hasn't affected his performance as much. We've seen him gain on the long run, but currently sitting third right now, probably in the best situation.
Behind him, you got the only non-playoff driver to breach the top 8. That's Jack Durham in that 217 Mountain Dew machine, running in a solid 4th place position. We've seen him kind of go up and down the running order tonight, but mostly he has ran consistently within the top 10. So a great run for that 217 machine tonight.
Damaris Hickenbottom has gained 9 spots since the drop of the green flag. He is now up to 5th after starting 14th in this race, and he set at 27.726. Has been one of the consistent drivers all night long. We talked about him and McRae kind of working in tandem. Now they've separated a little bit, but if you've always looked in the top 10 throughout this entire race, you'll be sure to find that yellow and blue number 09 Ford Mustang. He's been there all night long, and he's really not losing many points. He's actually gaining points along the way. It's sitting top 5 right now, setting up for a good stage at the moment.
Brian Mabry is currently running in 6th position. He's had to make a few evasive maneuvers tonight. He's done a fantastic job of keeping his car clean and avoiding all of the wrecks that we've had around this treacherous track. And right now in that number 3 Dale Earnhardt throwback machine, he's doing Dale proud, running P6, charging towards the front.
Then the last car on the lead lap stands in 7th place. That's Randy Drumhiller. Earlier saw him collect into the wall, and that allowed the 31 of Wineland to get by. And he's now back in front of Wineland, but he is still trying to work around the racetrack at the moment. And he's been also one of the drivers to at least be in position for the most part. He started in 21st, so easily a large game from where he started the green flag when the sun was setting earlier in the day. Over the nightfall, he has been still consistent, and he's been relatively stable compared to a lot of the others. We've seen him strike the wall a couple of times, but not necessarily fighting a large battle inside of that 30 machine.
Dave Fugue in position number 8, having the night that he was probably hoping to have after a series of connection issues and internet problems the last few weeks have put him back in the garage, unfortunately. Now he's got a decent top 10 run going, and if he can go ahead and stay where he's at and get a few cautions, he could get himself back on the lead lap and be back in this thing.
If there's one drivers that have been battling, it has been Eric Wineland going back up through the field, going to the front, going to the back, and then back to the front. As we have a couple drivers down pit road, we're going to cut through the field a little short now because we've got green flag pit stops underway. Starting with Damaris Hickenbottom, he was one of the first to go down pit road. Randy Drumhiller, as we were talking about him, he was falling spots to go down pit road, so he's now getting service on his machine. Jack Durham also following the same trend, so he is now in this group that will go down pit road. So Brian Mabry will gain spots up to 4th. Delaney, McRae, and Hickenbottom yet to pit. We were talking about how green flag pit stops could affect the rest of this race, and it has now going into stage number 2.
Absolutely, and you know, this is a track where short pitting is definitely a viable strategy. We talked about at Daytona how short pitting kind of had more cons than pros, so you really only did it if you had nothing to lose or if you were really going out on a limb for your strategy. But at a track like this, your lap times dissipate so quickly as the tires wear, and by the end of the tire run, you'll find yourself going 2 seconds a lap or more slower per lap. So if you can get in early, get those fresh tires, that could definitely help you out in the long run. But right now, it seems like Bryson Hickenbottom, the race leader, has opted to stick with the long run strategy to try to stretch that run out as long as he can, along with John Delaney and a few cars behind them. So differing strategies here tonight.
And if anyone knows how to play that long green flag strategy the most, it is definitely that 63 car of Hickenbottom. We saw him do this last week. Obviously a different racetrack. You're going full throttle on Daytona. It's more draft heavy, but he has still been able to pull off strategy in the best way possible. We've seen it 3 times now, and the results have been him in victory lane. We saw him at Michigan in our first broadcast of the Galaxy Cup Series. He played a green flag pit stop strategy that put him to the front at the end of the cycle, and he ended up staying up front all the way to the checker flag, and he won the race. Then another strategy involving at Daytona, where he was able to stay up front, was able to stay in front of the drivers, Cecil Green, Zach Probst, and those drivers that were fighting for second, and he was able to stay in front of them. He captured his win there. Might be the same situation that could fall into the 63's favor and potentially give him his 12th win if he's able to play it right. He is one of, I'd say, 3 or 4 drivers that have yet to go down pit road. Now just down to 3. Delaney has made his trip down pit road. He is now going under the pit road speed limit and going to the pit road to get his service done and get some fuel along the way. Meanwhile, McRae, Mabry have yet to make their trips down pit road. I don't believe Wineland, no, I think Wineland has. He is currently 1 lap down on the racetrack, so we have 4 cars left on the lead lap.
You know, I think another additional benefit to pitting early here, Ken, is that you can make a tire pressure adjustment. We have just now gotten to the full dark stage of this race where the sun has gone down. The track is just now about as cool as it's going to get. And at that point, making a tire pressure adjustment can totally change the handling of your car, make it feel like a completely different machine. And so if you can get in here and set your car up and get it to adapt to these temperatures before anybody else, that's just giving yourself an advantage. So possibly a very smart move by everybody who's come down early, while right now, Bryson Hixenbaugh, as we're on board with him, stays out and he continues to run laps around this track while everybody behind him seems like they're wanting to dip down on the pit road. Now it seems like, I believe that is the number 3, Brian Mabry, is going to join the pit road party. And man, there goes Delaney on those fresh tires. That's the difference, folks. That is the difference between old and fresh tires. I know we talk about it a lot on the stream, but that is exactly why. Look at how much speed Delaney has on those fresh tires as he is putting 3, 4, now 5 car lengths on the race leader, trying to make up as much time as he can before Bryson Hixenbaugh finally makes his way down pit road.
And I think he's the only one left to go down pit road. Preston McRae follows suit, and the rest of the drivers behind Hixenbaugh to go down pit road. And you mentioned the difference between fresh and old tires. Possible reference to Dover, as now the race leader, Hixenbaugh, goes down pit road. So we'll complete this cycle. Everyone behind Hixenbaugh, mind you, is a lap down. So that helps Hixenbaugh in terms of at least the separation. He probably won't lose as many spots as he would if the gap was not between laps. But possible reference to Dover, where we saw Hixenbaugh gain on the fresh tires. Obviously a different situation. One of them was saving fuel. Tanner Love saving a lot of fuel down that road. But Hixenbaugh was another part of that conversation at Dover, and we saw how exciting that finish was between him, Cecil Green, and the rest of the guys there. So that is always coming into mind, especially when you think about long green flag strategies concerning that 63 car. He will come off of pit road to get his 4 fresh tires, and he is out on that first stall. Eric Wineland unlaps himself and possibly will try to take over the race lead, but the distance might be good enough.
Behind your race leader, Jonathan Delaney, who was hoping to recapture some ground with his strategy, had a little bit of trouble in turns 3 and 4. Looked like Hickenbottom got into the wall in front of him, and he had to check up a lot. So he actually ended up sacrificing a lot of the time that he had made up by pitting early. So an unfortunate break for Jonathan Delaney. But right now it is Wineland in the lead. I believe he's the last driver to have yet to pit. And behind him, it is Bryson Hixenbaugh by 4 seconds.
And then that lead for Hixenbaugh definitely helped him out. He lost a spot to Wineland, so now he's about 4.5 seconds behind. That is a lead change, by the way. That is the first time we've had a lead change all night long, and it happens under green flag pit stop conditions. The first time we see somebody other than Hixenbaugh line up P number 1. Wineland will do so, maybe temporarily, as Hixenbaugh will have the fresher set of tires as he pitted later. He has already closed his gap to 3 seconds, so most likely we'll recapture the lead and we'll have another lead change, and it'll go back to Hixenbaugh in no time. Meanwhile, everyone up to 8th has regained their laps. Brian Mabry is the last driver to do so. And then Jack Durham, Kevin Steele, Dave Few, Cody Bird. A lot of those drivers still under 1 lap down. Samuelson being the last one. Currently 24 seconds back of your race leader. Hixenbaugh now up to the fresh tires. He's going to catch up to Wineland relatively quickly. The question is, how can he get by?
Well, I think it's a matter of, does he want to get by? Because Wineland is going to have to pit. He's going to have to bring his car down pit road. So maybe instead of burning your stuff up trying to pass this guy, just wait for him to drop down onto the apron and pass him then. You know, conserve your equipment. Make sure your tires stay nice and, temperature regulated instead of heating them up, trying to send it on the outside or on the inside. But who knows? Maybe he's going to try to get around him before he pits, because the longer he stays behind Wineland, the more time he's going to lose. So he does get around him. He has taken the lead back fairly effortlessly. That was a little bit easier than I thought it was going to be. We know Wineland likes to put up a battle, so now back to the position he's been in the entire race. Bryson Nixonbaugh back to P1.
He'll continue to lead. Wineland will fall to second, and we saw as Hicksonball was getting around the 31. The 7 of Wayne Grassley was just lining up his lap car, just trying to run his own race. They went 3 wide and split him in the middle, and then Hicksonball was able to regain the lead back into turn 1. They were still side by side on the front straightaway. I was surprised that they were still there. With the 31, well, the 63 had to slow up just a little bit to go on the inside of the 7 and be able to make space for both of them to be able to be clear of each other. Hicksonball will now have to get around some more lap traffic, including Brandon Gullett and Dave Fugue in the 04. He's possibly going to put Fugue 2 laps down at this point. Gullett still stuck 10 laps down at the moment, so he'll lap him. He'll be 11 laps down this time by. So we've now still have 8 drivers on this lead lap. We've got 23 more laps until the stage conclusion at lap 230. Stage number 2 will proceed with the yellow flag, and we'll have the rest of the field stacked up. But now that we have so many drivers on the lead lap, we just had 11. Now it's up to 9. It was up to 2 at one point. So really, what is the move if you're drivers like Mabry, your drivers like Durham, who are now trapped a lap down, who are now approaching the stage with a possible situation that you have to deal with?
Absolutely. Now Ryan Samuelson going down a lap there. That's going to put Princeton, the last driver on the lead lap. He's 25 seconds back. Hicksonball looming in his mirror to put him a lap down and claim yet another victim. I think a lot of these drivers are waiting for this stage to come to an end. They maybe want to make some adjustments, maybe get their car feeling a little bit better, and have a fresh start and an actual chance to be right up there in that lead pack and maybe make something happen. Because for a lot of these drivers, this has been a rough stage, just a lot of things going wrong for a lot of drivers. They don't call it one of the most difficult tracks on the circuit for no reason. This is a tough track, and it's claimed a lot of victims here tonight, Ken.
Yeah, it's claimed a lot of victims. And speaking of the victims at this racetrack, we've got one in the infield care center, Andre. And one of them is Zach Probst in the 162, was working with Delaney and Cameron Stone before that incident that ripped his front end off. And he currently is sitting in the garage. We'll bring him in, Andre.
Welcome to the booth, Zach Probst. You got a copy?
Gotcha.
Zach, you had a great run going tonight, running top 5 all night, and then unfortunately disaster struck when the 6 car of John Delaney got into the wall right in front of you. You had nowhere to go. Can you walk me through what happened there?
Looked to me like he just sent it in for no reason. I don't know why he'd be trying to catch Bryson when he's like 6 seconds ahead of him.
Right, we noticed that the 6 car was getting into the wall quite a few times tonight. It could have been a setup issue. Maybe he wasn't necessarily driving overly aggressive. Maybe that was just an unpredictable car. But either way, I don't think it really matters to you very much, huh?
Yeah, he just needs to control his car. He needs to know that it's only lap 130 out of 367.
Right, and I can definitely just understand and sympathize with your frustration. It's always difficult when something like that happens so early on, and then a lot of chaos broke out after that initial wreck. A lot of things happening on the straightaway behind it once the caution had already been called. So that one incident led to a whole flurry of snowball effects for a lot of other drivers. So we absolutely hate it for you, but even though you're taking a points hit tonight, now you know you have speed. I mean, you had a great run tonight. The car was there. Are you going to try and carry this momentum forward going further into the playoffs?
Yeah, hopefully I can get a good setup again for Richmond. Team TI Racing has been working pretty hard, making good setups. Just messed it up tonight.
Your team did look fantastic out there, and we're sorry to see it in that way. But we thank you for your time, and we wish you luck in the coming races.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for broadcasting.
All right, that was Zach Probst, the 162 car involved in that incident earlier on. Kenneth, We got a battle for second while this is going on. Eric Wineland and John Delaney. Delaney on the low side. Seems like Delaney's preferred to make his overtakes on the high side tonight. That's where he's made a few passes. Now forced to change his lineup down to the apron. And just like Cameron Stone before him, it seems like his car is not sticking on that bottom lane. It seems like he gets down there and the grip just goes away. He's got to lift. So now he's got Brian Mabry right behind him, breathing down his neck.
Yeah, and that won't help the 6th situation whatsoever. Brian Mabry is currently stuck a lap down in 9th. So if he gets around him, it won't be for position, but it'll put a pick between himself and the 31. Luckily, the 3 wasn't able to pounce just yet, and that'll allow the 6 to gain all the ground that he lost, trying to get by the 31. And as these tires start to wear down further into the run, you'll have drivers having to slow up. 3 and 4 is not the ideal place to try and make a move. You can try a slide job, but if you're unsuccessful, you have to kind of slow down to kind of prevent your car from sliding all the way up the racetrack and putting the driver on the outside, potentially in the wall. So we're still seeing that. We're still seeing it with the 31, just working that outside. The 6 trying to work that bottom groove, but it's not successful whatsoever, even on a little bit of fresher set of tires. He is right to the back bumper of the 31, and he's continuing to try as he's loose off turn 2. And it's been a tough situation for Delaney, and this continues to hold him up if he wants to catch fixing point.
I just want to say, anybody who doubts Eric Wineland's skill, which I don't think anybody really does, we all know he's a good driver, but Wineland is on older tires here, and he is still putting up this amazing defensive show. I mean, driving defensively like a pro on these old tires, continually holding off these attacks from John Delaney. You've seen Delaney sending it on the bottom. That corner got a little bit sideways, had to lift again. So even though he's got that advantage of fresher tires, he just can't quite get around that 31. That is really surprising and very impressive at the exact same time, Ken.
It just shows how much skill you need to have at a track like this, where, you know, even if you have an older set of tires, you can still be able to hold up with a lot of the drivers, even on fresh rubber. And you see how close it is. Delaney just trying to pinch that 31 up to the high side, but that outside groove continues to remain dominant. We really haven't seen it be defeated just yet, other than some instances and some exceptions. He's been working that outside lane so well to the point where Delaney, even if he just tries to make a move down the inside, it has not worked in 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I thought it was just the second half of the racetrack in 3 and 4, but it turns out it's still working in 1 and 2, where Wineland can still gain ground, where the 6 has to slow down to the middle of the corner and can't drift up as much.
Right. Real quick, Kenneth, we got another driver on the infield care center. Josh Coppernell, the driver of the number 42 involved in the incident earlier on. How about I bring him up here and you can have a word with him?
I'm going to bring Josh Coppernell in the booth. And Josh, first of all, welcome to the 3Y TV booth. You got a copy with us?
Yes, sir.
All right, Josh, not necessarily the race you hoped for here at Darlington. I know you were sporting that Terry Labonte throwback. It looked beautiful out on track. But just walk us through the events that happened there. I know that you were in a situation earlier where you had strike the wall, and then there was another that involved Cameron Stone. Just kind of take us through your experience there behind the wheel, behind the wheel of that 42.
Yeah, I'm not really sure still quite what happened between testing and the race. Tonight, the setup just didn't feel right. I'm not sure why. It was just really bad to drive. So we struggled all race long, and I probably am going to set the record for most Darlington strikes in the race. But, the incident between Stone and I downshifted one too many times. I went into first gear, slammed into the outside wall, locked up the brakes immediately. I looked to my left, saw John was coming, Delaney was coming in, and he was able to go low. And so I was just hoping that everybody was going to be able to follow suit, and unfortunately Stone wasn't able to. Clobbered into my car, and that was that. He's angry. He has a right to be angry. I reached out to him, but I feel really bad for him. I'm more mad that he was involved than I was involved there, because he does not deserve to go out that way based off that mistake on my part.
And you're one of the playoff drivers going into tonight at Darlington in the round of 16. And ever since this race now, it's kind of going on to Richmond. Is there somewhat of a game plan that you have going into Richmond and Bristol to ensure that you're able to gain enough points to go to the next round or even capture a win?
Just practice. The guys at the PBR shop, they do a great job getting these cars ready. They're very motivating. At one point, they were encouraging me to stay in the race tonight because I was just done before stage 1 even ended. But yeah, just get lots of practice, work on the car, and just help I'm able to make the next round.
All right, Joshua, we thank you for taking the time to talk with us, and we hope to see you out at Richmond next week and hopefully having a better run than you did tonight, and we wish you the best of luck going forward.
Thank you.
Josh Coppin out of the booth. He is currently sitting in 18th, 79 laps down out of this race for good. But meanwhile, we were watching this developing situation between Wineland and Delaney. Current update, Delaney has still not been able to get by that 31 machine. He has been tough all the way through. We saw the 7 Wayne Grassy get by. He's on the fresh rubber, so he is one of the drivers a couple laps down, just trying to get his way around the racetrack. But that gap between that 31 and the 6 has considerably grown. That 6, we thought maybe he had more shots to get by that 31. He has been still unsuccessful, and that further holds them up. They're 19.2 seconds now behind Hicksonball.
Yeah, the number 6 car has not been able to make the pass yet, but it's not for lack of trying. Look at him here, still making attempts to get around him, lunging it in on the bottom, getting loose on exit, fishtailing out of the corner, sparks flying as his rear end scrapes the outside retaining wall. But again, he's got more speed than the 31, so he's going to be able to catch up and try again. But the bottom lane is just so difficult to make the pass. I think if he's going to pass him, he's going to have to try to make it happen on the outside, which is just not easy to do, especially with these altered track conditions we have now that the sun has dropped. And it doesn't make it any easier that the 31 car is doing a fantastic job of driving defensively. While this battle is going on for another stage point, right now it is Bryson Hicksonbaugh going to claim his stage victory as we take the last lap of the stage, 19 seconds ahead of the closest car behind in Eric Wineland. Whoa, John Delaney loose, spinning inside wall hard.
Oh, John Delaney just got loose off of turn number 2, in turn, sending him into the apron, into the inside wall, and looks to be no yellow at the end of stage number 2. There's Hicksonbaugh that just crossed the line for the stage. We'll take a replay as this was happening. He was obviously trying to get by Wineland that we've been discussing numerous times already. Possibly another attempt to try to get to the back bumper. This time it results in him being spun around. This was going into turn number 2. Possibly was just loose there, and I think actually no contact with the outside wall sent him around, and now the yellow flag displays for the end of stage 2. Delaney falls back to 4th. Unfortunate situation for Delaney, and now he's scored a lap down.
Wow. What a development there. Pretty much guaranteed the 3rd spot in that stage, and then just got loose, and now losing several positions in that fray. So actually 1 spot. Wow! He lucked out there, losing 1 spot. But still, that's a valuable stage point in the playoffs. So definitely not the end of the stage he wanted to see. And also now, he's got quite a bit of damage to that rear end. That left rear taillight sitting a few inches higher than the right rear. So not what he's wanting to see as we approach the yellow flag pit stops. And who knows, maybe this is going to shake something up. Maybe Eric Wineland can find something, one of the few cars on the lead lap now. If he can get maybe a better stop than Bryson Hicksonbaugh and potentially get his car a little bit quicker on those fresh tires, who knows, we might have a challenger.
So we're seeing what looks to be the top 3 going down pit road: Hicksonbaugh, Wineland, McRae. Delaney, obviously, since he's a lap down, and the rest of the guys further a lap down, they will be pitting later in the next lap or so. So we'll see those drivers 4th on back go all the way down pit road. And we just pretty much have a battle between Hicksonbaugh, Wineland, and McRae as Hicksonbaugh, Wineland, and McRae go down pit road. McRae will be the first one to enter his pit stall all the way further back. The 63 will stall right into the first pit stall since he took the pole for tonight's event. Wineland will follow suit, and we'll see the battle off pit road. Probably won't be too close, probably the closest between the 31 and the 63. And it's been close a certain amount of times throughout this race, and they'll get their service down pit road. Hicksonbaugh will easily shoot out to 1st. Wineland will be 2nd. Preston McRae will be further back into 3rd, getting his service down pit road at the moment. So all the drivers on the lead lap getting their pit stops underway. We've got some drivers that are lap down also getting their pit stops. So meanwhile, we're going to talk to our stage 2 winner. We talked to him at the end of stage number 1. We're going to talk to him at the end of stage number 2. Bryson Nixonball, welcome back to the 3Y TV booth. You got a copy?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, Bryson, we talked to you earlier tonight, and you were talking about kind of switching things up and kind of overall adapting as the track started to change, and it has been no issue for you and your team. You have been dominant all night long, continuing to lead this race, and really, I'm not sure what else really to ask other than just how did that car feel over the course of the evening now that you really don't have the sun into a factor and now that the track is much more cool?
It's been good. It's been a little bit loose off of 4, but I've been taking it easier and not driving it hard off like I was for a little bit there. But it's been smooth.
And you're coming into these next, I'd say, 133 laps into the rest of stage number 3, all the way to the checkered flag. Are you expecting more green flag pit stops, or you think we might still have some caution spikes in the middle?
We might have a caution or 2. We'll probably get a green flag pit stop unless we get some well-timed cautions that split it all up. It should be 1 stop here to the end, but we'll see on fuel. I thought I had a chance at making it all the way through from that last caution, but I had to stop there.
All right, Bryson, well, congratulations on a stage 1 and a stage 2 victory. We hope to see you further on in the rest of this race. I know it's been a great race for you and your team, so we hope to see you, and we wish you luck in the next next stages all the way to the checkered flag.
Thank you. Hope to be talking to you after the race.
Bryson Nixonball out. He is your winner in stage number 2, and it's been all smooth sailing for that 63 so far, Andre. We really have been talking about him all night long. We've been talking about the battles further behind him because that 63 has always had the gap, and it really hasn't been close, and we were at ease. And you gotta believe that setup is at its absolute T and just perfect tonight.
Absolutely. I think it's very clear that his setup is the setup to beat. I mean, his car has been so hooked up. We've seen drivers struggle to make the bottom line work, and Bryson Nixonball hasn't really had to run the bottom line because he's been in the lead, but the way that he's weaved through traffic so effortlessly all night long, it does seem like he can really put his car anywhere that he needs to put it. So just an impressive run by him tonight, as now he's got a new challenger. Eric Wineland is going to be starting right behind him, and after coming up through the field twice, Wineland has another shot at redemption, and we're going to see if he can do anything with it, Ken.
And the last time we saw Eric Wineland have a shot at Nixonball, he was very close, but then got loose off the corner, and then obviously had to fall back through the field. He had to obviously gain his way all the way back up, and now he will be starting second once we get the green flag. And speaking of which, we got the 1-to-go signal from the pace car, so we will go green the next time we go around to the start-finish line. Wayne Grassy will be the free pass this time around. He will go on the wave around, actually. He will be going back and getting at least one of his laps back. He is currently sitting 4 laps down, so at least he'll get 1 lap to his benefit. To try to get back to this lead lap, there are a lot of drivers under the lead lap, just 4 now on the lead lap. 5th, the first driver lap down, is that 30 car of Randy Drumhiller, who's sitting in row number 3. So the top 4 that are now on the lead lap, it'll be Nixonball, Wineland, McRae, and Dulaney. All 4 of them trying to challenge, and if we get more yellows down the road, hopefully that will enable some more drivers get free passes and enable them to go back on the lead lap, maybe take some more positions down the road. So got 1 way all the way back, and again, we're just back to this topic of Nixonball setting his charge and setting his start at the front of this field. We'll see if he does this differently once again. Pace car is down to pit road. Nixonball, Wineland will lead the field back to green. This time an earlier jump for Nixonball, but still effective nonetheless. Wineland will fall a little bit further back as the green flag displays, and Brandon Gullett stuck in the middle of the lead lap car.
Man, I feel like it's Groundhog Day out here with these restarts looking the same every single time. But I tell you what, it seems like Bryson Nixonball has been on the ball with these restarts, getting the jump every single restart. Eric Wineland now, like I mentioned, presented with an opportunity to become the challenger, the one who can try and dethrone the man who's led most of the race thus far tonight. And we know his car has speed, driving incredibly defensively and trying to get around or try to keep the number 6 car from getting around him, and he did it successfully on older tires, I might add. So if anybody was going to get around Bryson Hixenbaugh, if anybody has the speed at this stage in the race, it could be Eric Wineland.
And Wineland has not certainly fell off the pace from Hixenbaugh early in this run. Remember, they're all on the fresh tires, so they're all on that level playing field apart from their setups. And he's been able to keep within, I'd say, a little more than half a second. You see him now there up in front of that 31 machine. Preston McRae will follow suit. He's now 1.7 seconds behind your race leader. But the driver right now in the lead lap that is currently battling through a lot of other cars is the driver who just went a lap down under the stage yellow. That was Jonathan Delaney, who we saw go around off of turn number 2. He will now have to get by some cars along the way. You see him right in front of the 3 of Ryan Mabry in the 3 car. He's going to have to get around a lot of drivers. That is the 04 of Dave Fugue, the 55 of Brandon Gullick. Kevin Steele is in this as well. The 217 of Durham. Lots of drivers stuck under a lap, and Delaney has to get by, but he really hasn't been able to gain so much ground.
No, it looks like Delaney might be a little off pace, possibly due to the damage. But a few cars have gotten around him. That was Brian Mabry in the 3 that just made a pass on him on the low side. And now here comes the number 5, Alex Princeton, also looking to make a move on the inside of the 6 car from a lap down. Remember, John Delaney is the last car on the lead lap, so this isn't necessarily for position. The 5 car sending it down to the bottom and getting a little bit loose, so John's going to keep that position for at least another corner before he can gather it up and try again in that 5 machine. But, loose out of the corner. He's going to go low, and he's going to let him go. So he's saying, all right, I see you've got the pace. Go on around me. Now Cody Bird lining up behind him, and unfortunately that 6 car is just not what it used to be. That damage is definitely holding him back, Ken.
Yeah, any aerodynamic damage you have, especially at a track like this where you have the high downforce package and really it relies more than at tracks that we're going to see in the next few weeks, Richmond and Bristol, where there's short tracks and it won't be as aerodynamically dependent. But at tracks like these, and especially like we saw at Daytona last week, that damage can affect you dramatically, and it is so far continuing to be a struggle for Delaney as he still sits 4th. Presumably letting these drivers by as a signal that these drivers are a lap down, and it's not necessarily for position. He won't really have to work around them for anything, and he's not losing points along the way. So I think if you're Delaney right now, you're right behind the wheel, you're not as quick as McRae, Wineland, and Hixenbaugh right now, your best bet is not to really fight with these lap cars, just kind of let them by, run their own race. You're not losing points in the process anyway.
Right. Conserve your equipment. He knows he has damage. He's not quite on pace. There's no reason to burn his stuff up this early on, especially when nobody behind him is on the lead lap yet. So if another caution occurs, he's still going to be in 4th. So a smart play by him, potentially, and we're going to see if he can maybe get some more damage repaired. I know Delaney's probably hoping for another caution, because if he gets another yellow, he can come down pit road, get another 30 or 40 seconds worth of damage fixed. And who knows, maybe that's the difference. Maybe that's what he needs to get back in the game. But right now, riding around the track, losing a lot of positions.
We got the 30 Randy Drumhiller into the wall. Luckily, no one else involved, but he had a nice strike there and a Darlington strike nonetheless. He fell to the 04 and the 44 of Kevin Steele, and those drivers will get by. And we've seen him do it once, and we see him do it again. We saw Drumhiller get into the wall earlier in this race with Cameron Stone right behind, and now he does it once more, now under fire from Brian Mabry.
Yeah, we've seen that mistake a lot tonight. It's just something that's super easy to do. Fortunately, again, for the number 30 machine, he didn't lose too much position. Drumhiller pretty much maintaining his spot, and didn't get too much damage either. The right side of that car is looking all right, so he can regroup, get back in his rhythm, and regain that time that he lost. But on board, you can see his car's looking pretty good. That hood isn't bent up. The fender well's right where it should be, and he can get that thing gathered up. But right now, we're looking at the number 53 machine, Preston McRae. That is 3rd place, 5 seconds back from the leader as we go on board. As we see some comparisons here, last time around it was Eric Wineland with a 28.256 versus Preston McRae with a 28.416. And it's a 1.3 second total gap. So he's had speed all night long, been consistently up there in the podium, and a great run so far tonight for that 53, Ken.
Yeah, if he stays here, there's really nothing to lose for that 53, because he can gain spots from Wineland and Hixenbaugh. He can gain those 2 points, but in the bigger picture, he's gaining spots on a lot of other drivers that'll fall back further, and either drivers in front of him like Kevin Steele going into this race that he'll gain spots on, and also drivers who are further back behind who are having struggling nights that are losing even more points to their total, and that leaves Preston McRae at least with a little bit of a cushion, to have in the point standings going into next week, where let's say if he did not have a great race to, let's say, a Richmond or Bristol, he can maybe fall back on that and on that gap that he built here at Darlington, and he'll be able to set it through the rest of this first round if things continue to fall into his favor. So top 4 still under the lead lap. Hixenbaugh leads the field by 4.4 seconds back to Eric Wineland, and Preston McRae is just about a second behind, 1.1 seconds behind Wineland. This seems to be one of the closer battles we're seeing between the lead lap cars. Delaney still further back from some of the lap cars, Cody Bird included. And we saw Dave Few, Kevin Steele among those drivers. He's letting by Alex Princeton as well. Damaris Hickenbottom, currently the first driver a lap down. He is sitting in 5th. You're on board with the driver right behind him. That's Ryan Samuelson in the 16, and currently watching his ways. You saw the 09 get into the wall. This is for position, though. All the drivers from 5th to 9th are a lap down, so they all are able to gain spots up to there. Of course, you can't gain any spots up to 5th. You can go all the way up to 5th. You can't gain more unless the yellow comes out and you're able to fight for that free pass. But we have kind of a battle within a battle, we should say, because we have a battle for the lead laps. We have those drivers contending for spots, but then you have these drivers one lap down, which even though they're one lap down, and one driver's hard into the inside wall, that is Kevin Steele. He was able to save it, though. I don't think he was able to make contact with the inside wall, but luckily keeps it straight. We got no yellow, but Andre, back to what I was saying, the battle within a battle situation, kind of like Inception. We have the lead lap cars going for position, but then we have all the drivers one lap down also getting spots as well.
Absolutely. This lucky dog position is everything. When you have so few cars on the lead lap, if you can get on that lead lap and secure yourself a pretty much guaranteed top 5 or top 10, that is very, very important. That could be the difference between guaranteeing yourself a top 5 and only guaranteeing yourself a top 15 per se. So they're definitely fighting it out for that, and their paces are really similar. We saw the comparisons earlier when we were on board with Samuelson, and lap times were near identical. And that is something that I think might be making Hickenbottom a little bit nervous, because when the car behind you is just as fast and they're in dirty air, they got some speed. So we got a battle brewing for the lucky dog position, and who knows, we could definitely see a yellow come out, and if that were to happen, you want to be that first car a lap down. Now, John Delaney is 18 seconds back currently. He is falling back to the leader. If he gets lapped, then he's the lucky dog, and this battle between Hickenbottom and Samuelson doesn't mean so much. So these guys are hoping that Delaney can pick up the pace and hopefully stay on the lead lap. But a lot of dynamics going on, a lot of luck going into who's going to get this lucky dog, and who's going to be able to find themselves on the lead lap.
Yeah, if your drivers like Hickenbottom and Samuelson, you're just praying that Delaney does not fall all the way back to one lap down, or if that situation is close to happening, that a yellow comes out before he's able to even go one lap down. But they can't really control that situation. They just have to pray that the 6 is able to keep himself stable. He doesn't have a situation that he did at the end of stage 2 where he goes around and ends up getting a lap down anyway, even with no yellow. So they're probably hoping that situation to be the case, and that Delaney is not going to fall one lap down, and that he's able to continue his stride all the way to the rest of the race. And actually he spun around Cody Bird, and a yellow comes out a lap 256. I was just watching that number 6 car, and he was getting with Cody Bird there, and Cody Bird just went around, and that is another yellow to add on to this evening on a couple that we've had that have taken out some drivers. And this was the incident between Delaney and Bird, and not sure what happened there, or why that really happened. Delaney, of course, one of the drivers on the lead lap. Cody Bird, 3 laps down, sitting 13th. So I'm not sure what the situation here is. Maybe just some bad placement.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they had something going on before this that made Delaney particularly aggressive, or if that was just a misjudgment by Delaney. We know his car hasn't been super consistent. Either way, I don't think he's making too many friends out here tonight. We had one driver kind of frustrated with him earlier. I'm not sure what happened here, but we're on board right now with Cody Bird as he just gets sent into the corner, and around he goes hard into the outside wall, driver's side first, and a fair amount of damage to that machine. But Let me tell you what that did. That gave Damaris Hickenbottom the lucky dog position. That's going to get him up into the lead lap, and that also kept John Delaney from going a lap down. So now the next in line, should we get another caution, is going to be Brian Mabry. We know he's been a solid car all night. If he could get on the lead lap, who knows what he's capable of. But this has changed a lot of things, Ken.
Yeah, it has changed up the game significantly. We just saw the drivers go down pit road. Hickenbottom will still lead everyone down pit road, and he will lead them out. He will be the first driver starting on first, and then Eric Wineland will follow suit into second. Delaney still third. He's got some time to be on pit road. He will lose a spot to Preston McRae. And we'll have our top 5, and we'll have more drivers on the lead lap per se. So that will be always great to discuss. We'll have the lucky dog play into effect, and that will further maximize the drivers that'll be on the lead lap trying to fight for position.
All right. Well, we're going to throw it to commercial. When we come back, more racing action from Darlington Raceway. 5 cars now on the lead lap. Damaris Hickenbottom going to try to make something happen.
Back at Darlington Raceway, Kenneth Bueno and Andre Grandbush here with you, and we have just approached the restart on lap 260. Bryson Hickenbottom has led every single lap since the drop of the green flag, and he will do so once again on this restart. Early jump once again, continuing to throw the field off their pace, and McRae and Wineland will follow second and third after Wineland lost a spot down pit road, and Delaney also lost a spot to Damaris Hickenbottom. Now we've got 5 drivers on the lead lap as opposed to 4. They're still doing a lot of battle with drivers, even a lap down.
Absolutely. You might have noticed the graphics changing once more. Shout out to Carlos for throwing together these throwback graphics, giving the stream a little bit more of a retro look for this throwback race. We've switched to this a couple times tonight, and I think it looks fantastic. I love it. So great job to the producer, Carlos Acosta. But right now, Jonathan Delaney remaining on the lead lap, but he is the last car on the lead lap. So, you know, some people in this situation are probably going to say, well, I'm the last car on the lead lap. I'm just going to take it easy. But Jonathan Delaney isn't some people. He's an aggressive driver. He likes to try to make anything happen when he can make it happen. So who knows? He might be able to get up through the field. Damaris Hickenbottom ahead of him in P4. I think this is the furthest up the grid he's been all night. Correct me if I'm wrong. But he is running phenomenally right now. Cody Bird dropping to the bottom in front of him, letting them go. A little bit sideways there for the 09, but carrying a lot of speed nonetheless as the 6 car gets into the wall behind him. But right now, it is Higginbottom trying to chase down Wineland.
And Wineland and McRae have been trying to catch up to Hicksonball and pick up spots from there and pick up time, but they have yet to do so. But this is one of the closer battles with the drivers on the lead lap. The 53 of McRae and the 31 now just separated by, I'd just say, a couple of car lengths between the two. And this is some of the closest they've been all race long. I think I saw them a little bit closer earlier in the last green flag run, but they kind of fell off through each other. But they're actually gaining a little bit of ground on Hicksonball. I saw the lap close from just about 1 second to 0.8 from Preston McRae. So possibly a little bit quicker this time around, or maybe just trying to catch up, because I think now at this point you're into this last stage. You still got a long way to go, just about 100 laps left, but you're getting into this final stint. If you're going to push and you're going to try to get up to the lead, the answer to that it will be just to do it right now.
We mentioned that these drivers were able to pit on this last caution, and we've also talked about how much tire pressure can affect your handling. Who knows, with that 53 finding this little bit of added speed seemingly, maybe he made some tire pressure adjustments, but the 09, Damaris Hickenbottom, got into the wall a little bit there. Didn't seem to be too harsh of an impact. I don't think that's going to affect his car or the aero too much, but that might get him out of the rhythm. That might kind of throw him for a loop. He's got to focus now, get back in the swing of things, and if he can do that, I think he's going to be fine. But right now, it is still Bryson Hicksonbaugh out front, as Preston McRae is not letting him build that gap that he has built so many times tonight. These lap times are near identical. Last time around, Preston McRae ran a 27.78, and Bryson Hicksonbaugh ran a 27.70. So Bryson Hicksonbaugh a little bit quicker, but still nearly identical lap times. And who knows, as this run goes on and the cars begin to change as the tires wear, maybe Preston McRae has something for the leader.
And they're considerably close. Hicksonball has been able to gap the second place car by a large margin in most of these runs, and it really hasn't built up as quickly as it has this time around. It's kind of been slow development for that 63. Last time around, it was 0.992 between the leader and Preston McRae. It's now grown to 1.2. We're on board with Eric Wineland as he just broke the wall off of turn number 4, and now the gap is grown to 1.252. So it is growing, but it's growing considerably, like gradually. It's not growing very largely as it has with a lot of the other instances where Hicksonball was just easily able to gap a 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds at that point, and Preston McRae has been able to do so. But I think the reason why we've got some development that Bryson Hicksonball might be turning off his engine, possibly. Might be another pit strategy. Oh no, Wineland, correct. Excuse me.
They might both be saving because their paces are very similar. We talked about the lap times a little bit earlier, and you mentioned the gap is growing, but it's not growing at the excessive rate that it had been all night long prior to this run. So maybe these drivers are pretty close on fuel. It's not hard to imagine. I mean, we're on lap 271 of 367. We've got a lot of racing left. And if these drivers want to make it on just one more stop, it seems logical that they'd have to save. I'm not sure that they could make it with just one stop if they were going all out. Cameron Stone causing a bit of a bottleneck there for Wineland and the 53 of Preston McRae. coming out of the corner, he just didn't quite have the speed. He did everything he could to get out of the way, but unfortunately, it just wasn't quite soon enough. So I think McRae might have scraped the wall a little bit there when that happened, and Wineland had to check up and lost a little bit of time. So that was quite the scary moment for the 53 car.
Well, now you mentioned saving, and we talked to Hicksonball about this third stage, and he was talking about 2 stops or 1 stops, and possibly different strategies possibly within the rest of this race. And we have a couple drivers already bouncing on that strategy. And if we stay green all the way through, which we've had already, both instances, we've had yellow flag splice runs in the middle, and we've had drivers go down pit road and not have to worry about going down under the green flag. And then we've had the situation later in this race where we have drivers go down on green flag pit stops, and we saw the entire cycle wrap around, most notably with Eric Wineland being one of the drivers who did not pit and was one of the drivers who was on the older tires. So we're seeing more strategies being played out, because now that Wineland did that strategy in the last time we got the green flag pit stops, that could potentially help his case going into this next wave, if we have one, that he'll be able to know how to perform the undercut or maybe the overcut and try another strategy that could differ from the race leader that could give him this race lead. Remember, when they were close together, Wineland and Hicksonball had the freshest tires. Eric Wineland did not. He stayed out just a little bit longer, and they had a tire difference, so the 63 was able to get by. But if you're going down to the strategy, we still got less than 100 laps to go. You got to start thinking about it, and possibly to some of these drivers, like you said, that they've been learning, they could possibly be using what they've learned now to their advantage.
The 53 getting into the outside wall coming out of the corner, that allowed the 31 to sneak into that open door. He's now made the pass and secured the second position from the 53. Now the 53 getting a bit of a run out of the corner, but he's going to back out of it. No point in driving too aggressively, he probably thinks, especially when everybody is saving and trying to conserve. The gap to the leader has grown over the last few laps, now up to 2.8 seconds. So it is possible that Bryson Hicksonball has quit saving, or potentially he is saving, but not quite as much as the guys behind. But right now it's about a 3-second gap back to Wineland, and I don't think a whole lot of that is going to change, save for maybe some lap traffic, until the pit sequence occurs. I've noticed the 31 car looks a little loose. There's been a couple times where he's been so sideways coming out of the corner that I swear I could hear Eurobeat coming from his car, but he's gathered it up every single time and made a couple of impressive saves. So if he can just conserve his equipment, save that fuel, and just wait until this pit sequence plays out to try and maybe make up that time he's lost on track, maybe he'll have something.
Yeah, and hopefully now that him and Preston McRae are now separated from each other, that could allow Wineland to start closing in the gap between himself and Hicksonball. Remember, it kind of grew most notably because McRae and Wineland were so close to each other, and then they were side by side at that moment. That loses time to the race leader. He's now 3.448 seconds behind Hicksonball at the moment, and then it all the way falls back to 4 with Preston McRae. And then you're looking at the last 2 drivers on the lead lap. Damaris Hickenbottom 9.4 seconds back, Delaney 12.6. It has not been the night, at least the shift into the nightfall that the 6 probably hoped for. He was very strong early in this race, but remember, he did not have any damage down the road. He wasn't really striking the wall as much. We saw him brush it a couple of times, but it was never enough to the point where it would damage his race car. But now it is taking effect, and it is starting to hold him back. Remember, when he hit that outside wall and then went back to the inside wall and went around at the end of stage 2, that really did not help his situation whatsoever. And coupled with that rear end damage, it has been rough for that 6 to really wheel that race car. And it's been kind of a place that he just brushes the wall once more. It's still not been a great situation, but we've got all top 7 playoff drivers at the moment.
You know, you mentioned how rough of a night it has been for the number 6 car, and it has. It's been pretty disastrous. I mean, he is running P5. We can't forget that. I mean, overall, he's got a good finishing position pretty much wrapped up, but it has been incident-filled, and you got to think, this is the very beginning of the playoffs, and he's probably aggravated a few drivers. I mean, rivalries do form when incidents occur, but like what we saw between the number 6 and the number 64 of Cody Bird, or also what happened earlier in the race. So, you know, when you make rivals this early into the playoffs, that can really come back to bite you. And I think he's got a little bit of work to do to rebuild these bridges. after what's going on tonight. And I'm not saying he's done anything intentional. I don't think he has. I've said all night I think his car is just not with him. It seems to be very unpredictable, and he's struggling with it. But you know, when you're a competitor, that's not necessarily what matters to you. You know what I mean? Like, you get wrecked out, and it doesn't matter if it was an accident or intentional. It frustrates you. So, an unfortunate night for John Delaney. I know everybody in this league knows that he doesn't do anything intentionally, but we'll see what happens going forward with some of these rivalries that may be formed. I know I heard Cody Bird on the radio. He was not too pleased after that incident. So, right now, running top 5, John Delaney, but he's run this top 5 through a lot of adversity.
And speaking of his incident with Cody Bird is a playoff driver as well. So it's not only just something that maybe you've developed with somebody that wasn't in the playoffs that he'll see obviously returning next week and the week so forth, but it's a playoff driver too, a driver that's battling with him for points to gain spots and get into the next round of 16 and get out of the round of 16, go to the round of 12 and so forth. So it's not only just in between just the general consensus of the field, it's within 2 playoff drivers. So the tension can carry on in the next week. And like I've heard in a quote before that I've heard saying that race car drivers have the memory of elephants. You really don't forget anything when you're a race car driver. Even the small little inconveniences, the small things that went down, you remember it and you take forward. Whether you take action upon it, whether you decide to try to take a retaliation or try a different route is up to the driver. But in terms of remembering that situation, knowing what happened with that driver and knowing that the tension is there, it still carries on through the rest of these playoffs and possibly can make drivers more aggressive.
Right, and I would say another factor when it comes to rivalries forming or remembering what somebody did, I think one thing you have to consider is what track we're at. I mean, this is a tough track, and accidents are going to happen. And if I'm somebody who has been dumped or hit, or if somebody has gotten into me tonight, I'm thinking, you know what? It's Darlington. This is going to happen. And I think a lot of these drivers are smart enough and cool-headed enough that once they calm down, they probably aren't going to carry too much going forward. But regardless, it's still something that can happen. Sometimes some drivers are more hot-headed than others, and then when that carries forward in these playoffs, that can really shake things up. I mean, in real life, we've seen rivalries completely change the face of the playoffs. I mean, Matt Kenseth and Joey Logano, anybody remember that one? So it's going to be fun going forward to watch what happens, but right now, this gap has grown a little bit between Hixenbaugh and Wineland, up to 5.3 seconds now, as we ride on board with Hixenbaugh as he laps both of his high-side teammates, Cameron Stone and Cody Bird, going another lap down. And the hood cam here, you can see just how narrow this track is. This is why accidents happen. This is why you tend to be a little bit more forgiving if something were to happen between you and another driver, because there's nowhere to go. It's so easy to make one minor misinput on your car and have something disastrous happen because of it. So it's a tough track, but Bryson Hixenbaugh, he's grabbed this track by the horns, and he is riding it to a dominating lead all night long. And behind him, we got about a second between second and third. That's Wineland and Preston McRae. Hickenbottom a little bit further back from them, 15.8 seconds back for Hickenbottom and 17.3 for John Delaney.
And referring back to what you just said about the tensions and the track, especially most notably that it's Darlington as opposed to some of the other tracks. When I think of playoff tensions between playoff drivers or drivers in contention for the championship and where they usually shine out, most notably, I think of, you mentioned Matt Kenseth and Joe Logano. That took place at Martinsville. Then Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, also at Martinsville. Denny Hamlin and Joey Logano, also at Martinsville. And then also one back in 2011, Jimmy Johnson and Kurt Busch. Those are all short tracks. That's the general comparison between all of those moments. They were all at short tracks. And guess what, Andre? We're going to short tracks not only next week, but the week after that to close out the round. So maybe the tensions might not be as high here at Darlington, considering that it's a tough track to be around and a lot of drivers can make mistakes. And it's a track where, the tensions probably aren't as high because of that. Going into Richmond and Bristol next week, I'm curious to see what's really going to happen there and if anything is going to arise out of that. You just looked at Wayne Grassy going down pit road. He is 5 laps down, so our car go very loose. That was Cody Bird in 64. and that was right in front of the 31 of Wineland as he's trying to get around them. Currently 5.7 seconds back of your race leader at the moment, as we're approaching 8 laps to go from the 67 lap to go mark on lap 300. We're on board with Cody Bird at the moment. There goes Eric Wineland by.
I can't say I understand that one too much. Cody Bird made a little bit of contact with his teammates for position, not for position. They're laps down, and they're racing like that. So kind of a weird situation there, but luckily nothing came of it. They were both able to gather it up. You saw Cody Bird shoot to the bottom and then get it corrected and get back up to the track. No harm, no foul. So nothing really happening there. Meanwhile, Delaney is getting pretty close. He's within about 8 seconds now, 8 or 9 seconds of going a lap down. If that were to happen, that's going to put him in the lucky dog position and snag it away from a driver like Brian Mabry, who's been so close. He's been on the cusp of that lucky dog position for so long, being the second car a lap down a couple times now when we've had yellows. But right now, as long as Delaney stays on the lead lap, he's in prime position to get that free pass. So he's another driver hoping that Delaney can keep it together, stay on the lead lap, and then if a yellow were to come out, he's going to be right up there in contention. But as it stands right now, Bryson Nixonbach continuing to close in on the number 6.
And Bryson Nixonbach got to be slowly catching the little specks in front of his windshield, where he'll see obviously the driver's 1 lap down and possibly seeing Delaney further down the road. Delaney entering 1 and 2, Bryson Nixonbach just entering 1 and 2. So he is getting closer for sure. No doubt that he is closely approaching, and if he goes 1 lap down, that'll be worse situation for Mabry and Drumhiller and even Alex Princeton, who are 6th, 7th, 8th, all drivers currently sitting 1 lap down, and they will have to fight and claw even more to catch up to Delaney to try and make that pass for position, inevitably get that free pass if a yellow comes out. Remember, we don't have any stages from here on out. We just are going to go green unless a yellow comes out through the rest of this race until lap 267. And about now is where we'll start to probably see a lot of strategies start to come into play. We see the field start to spread out a lot more than they would. Usually in these later runs, we see a lot of separation and lots of seconds separating lead lap cars and even drivers a lap down a little further back in the field. And now is where you're going to have to start thinking about, where do I pit, how do I pit, and what time do I pit? Where do I position myself to go down pit road in order to maybe make that undercut or the overcut? Am I going to try and stay out for the most part? We saw Eric Wineland turn off his engine in certain parts of the track, so maybe he might be looking for that overcut, or maybe he has something else up his sleeve that we have no knowledge of. So interesting development as we're going to start to get this pit road strategy down, and possibly drivers who could start to unlap themselves from then on.
Absolutely. Right now, I'm looking at the number 6 of John Delaney, and he's got a lot of pressure from behind from that number 5 machine, Alex Princeton. Now, he is the 3rd car a lap down. He has a lot of pace. His lap times are pretty good. If he can get around the number 6 machine, he has a chance to run down the other cars that are a lap down and try to claim that lucky dog position for himself. But to do it, he's going to have to get around that 6 machine. If the 6 actually scraped the wall a little bit there. Until then, he's going to have to ride behind and sacrifice this time. So I'm sure he's hungry to get around the number 6 and try to get that lucky dog. But that has been the story all night long. Just a lot of drivers fighting for this lucky dog, trying to get the free pass and pretty much lock themselves into a good finishing position. So this battle between the 5 and the 6, the 5 again making another lunge. Now he is at the quarter panel, and he's going to get a little bit of a side draft, but he's going to lift and concede the position. We've seen it so many times tonight. The bottom line, just not the preferred line. The tires just don't have enough grip down there, Ken.
And as you're looking at the contention between the 6 and the 5, if you look a little bit further up ahead, that 6 is right behind the 09 of Hickenbottom, and he's the 09 currently sitting 4th. So not only will he gain, obviously getting around some of the lap cars, but he's also could gain a spot on the 09 in the process and pick up 4th place. He picked up all that gap that was between the two of them. Now it's just about a second, I'd say, between the two, and it went down just a little bit. Obviously, Alex Princeton now splitting the middle, so that's going to put more time between the 09 and the 6. But they are currently 22 seconds behind the race leader, Hickenbottom, as the lead continues to grow. 7.269 seconds and all the way to 9.9 to Preston McRae. And a lot of these drivers still going for positions, even though they're a lap down. Princeton, I think, just a little bit further back from Drumhiller, who's a little further up the road. He is the next car that Princeton needs to get by in order to gain P number 7, and then obviously has to catch up to Brian Mabry further down in order to get the lucky dog position, unless Delaney goes one lap down, and that's still a developing situation as I think the gap continues to close between the two.
It's definitely closing. We're down to 23 seconds back to John Delaney. They're running about 30-second laps, give or take, right now with the way that the tires have worn. So about 7 seconds away from being lapped. And if that happens, all of this effort the 5 car is putting into rallying right now might be for nothing. So he's definitely hoping that the 6 car can keep it together. But Damaris Hickenbottom, we haven't talked about him a whole lot, even though he's been running up here. His lap times have been remarkably consistent this whole time. John Delaney, his lap times have fluctuated. The 5 cars' lap times have fluctuated by a few tenths. But Hickenbottom, he has been painfully consistent up here in P4. He is 23 seconds back to the leader, but still P4. That's what you got to remember. And that is an impressive gain from starting this race in 14th place and a good points day for the 09.
Yeah, it'll be a great one for the 09 to capture P4 if he's able to hold on to it, and it's looking favorable for him right now in this latter portion of the race. But also coming into conversation, if he's able to nail that pit stop strategy under the green flag or even under the yellow flag if we get it, and then we'll just see how the 09 fares out from there on out. We had one driver go down pit road, claimed he was pitting in. The 217 of Jack Durham is now exiting pit road. He just got off the pit road exit. He's one of the first drivers to pit, currently sitting 3 laps down on the racetrack. Haven't seen anybody further up the road go down pit road, so I think a lot of these drivers are still playing the waiting game. I think they might, Andre, they might just be waiting for one driver to cue the entire situation. And usually that does happen through green flag pit stops. If you're a little bit confused as to what your plan is or what you're intending to do on this green flag pit stop cycle, you might just want to kind of go off of drivers who are pitting in around you, because if you have a driver ahead of you go down pit road, that gives you a little bit more leverage, gives you a little bit more of headroom as to what they're doing, and then you know exactly what you can do. As Damaris Hickenbottom gets into the wall, contact between Princeton and Grassley, but they save it. They're able to keep it straight. No yellow on the racetrack. Close situation between 2 lap cars and a lap car. We'll take a replay.
Just a close situation. It was the 09 getting into the wall initially that I think started this. The 5 and the 7 having to check up, and unfortunately 2 cars in the same real estate just wasn't going to work. So great job by everybody involved to actually gather that up. That could have been a lot worse than it was. You can see here the 5 checks up to avoid the 09, and then just a slight tap, 2 taps from the 7 car, and yet still keeping it straight. In the 16, Ryan Samuelson making a great evasive maneuver to stay up on the outside wall and avoid all of that going on. We're riding on board now with John Delaney, as he was right behind all of this happening. They're going to spin beneath him, and he's going to stay right in the middle of the track, clear from all of the chaos, Ken.
Oh man, that was tough. And as we were looking at the replay, we've got one lead lap driver on pit road. Eric Wineland is the first one to make a stop apart from the 217 of Durham, but he's the first car on the lead lap to go down pit road. He was sitting second at the moment, just lost a spot to McRae, possibly will be to Delaney and Hickenbottom very soon, as Delaney got around Hickenbottom for position. So we're having changes already continuing to happen throughout this run, as Wineland will be the first to signal. Question is, where will everybody else go after?
And it looks like Damaris Hickenbottom is slow on the bottom, potentially damaged, but we got more cars coming down pit road, it would seem. So looks like the 09 is going to bring it in, and he's going to be one of a few to start this pit sequence initially. And right now, I think that's probably the move. If you're not the leader, why not pit early, try to get those fresh tires, get some speed, and get the car handling the way you want it. But right now, it's kind of a game of chicken between the leaders. It's you mentioned, Ken, it's like you wait for one guy to pit, and then that starts the domino effect that leads to everybody else pitting. It's kind of like playing chicken in a way. It's like, well, if he pits, I'm going to pit. So that's what we got going on up front. But we know from past reference earlier on in the race, Hickenbottom tends to stay out a little bit longer than everybody else. So the longer he stays out, I think that means the longer drivers like Preston McRae and John Delaney are going to stay out. So very interesting developments here, as it looks like Bryson Hickenbottom now slow on the bottom, potentially bringing it into pit road. The leader coming down pit road.
I thought he was going to try the overcut and just stay out a little bit longer, but nonetheless, he will be down pit road. Alex Princeton also follows. That'll leave Preston McRae to be your race leader, along with Jonathan Delaney. Ryan Mabry also trying to get his lap back. He's still a lap down, along with Drumhiller. Now Hickenbottom is a lap down. Lots of drivers getting put a lap down, but once this cycle comes around, we'll see it change inevitably as the race leader is down pit road. He's going to lose a spot to McRae, and now Delaney's on pit road, almost locked up the brakes.
And that is going to open the window to John Delaney to try and possibly lead a lap here if he stays out, or if he pits, then he won't. But we have the third new leader of the race. It's going to be Preston McRae. He's working his way down pit road right now. So he's going to get that thing topped off, get some fresh tires on there, and try and make a charge to the end. Whether or not they can make it there from here remains to be seen. It's going to be quite a stretch, but fully possible if they were to save enough. So right now, the 63 machine of Bryson Hicksonbaugh back out on track, 34 seconds behind McRae. We're going to see where he files out in relation to that 53 machine.
Yeah, we'll see Hicksonbaugh still out on the racetrack, and now he's going to get by the 53. So back to the race lead will be Bryson Hicksonbaugh. Brian Mabry, meanwhile, will stay out, mostly intention of to get back on the lead lap for now and try to overcut on these leaders. Delaney obviously went down pit road. I saw Drumhiller now down pit road as well. Hickenbottom obviously went down pit road. Kevin Steele is now down pit road. Weiland continues to stay out after his stop. Princeton as well. Durham, who started this entire cycle, will stay out. And now it's just how they cycle back, Andre, because if we stay green from here on out, we'll just have this strategy in, and the cycle will continue to go around, and we'll have drivers trying different things, like Brian Mabry, for example, to get more spots out of this. He's currently sitting second at the moment. Maybe those fresh tires will start to catch up to him, and the guys like McRae, Hickenbottom, and Drumhiller, and the rest, Delaney as well. So we'll see how that develops, and we have just now 4 drivers still on the lead lap. I thought Delaney might have been on the lead lap, but he is now 1 lap down, so still stays the same in the situation of the lap cars. But this time, Brian Mabry replaces Delaney on the lead lap.
And I think what's going on inside of Brian Mabry's head is he's waiting for a caution. He knows the only way to really get back on the lead lap at this point is to either be the lucky dog or to be on the lead lap when the caution occurs. And whoa, contact with the outside wall, spinning down the track, nearly making contact with the 31 of Eric Wineland, but managing to steer clear and gather it back up. As I was saying, if a caution were to come out right now, he'd be on the lead lap and not even need the lucky dog. So the longer he stays out, the more chance there is for a caution. But, you know, we can't really plan on that. You know, it's been a while since we've had a caution. We've had this long green flag run. So it's a strategy call. It's a risk to stay out this long and give up even more time, but it could pay off if we were to get another yellow. Yeah.
It's almost 5 seconds, or at least less than 5 seconds, between McRae and Mabry at the moment. And McRae went down pit road. Brian still electing to stay out this time by, so he will file in second, 16 seconds behind your leader Hicksonbaugh with just less than 50 laps to go in this race. Still a lot of drivers down on the lead lap. Hickenbottom will be the last one on the lead lap. Delaney was trapped a lap down during that sequence, so probably not the best situation. He's probably at this point just hoping for a yellow right now so that he can be able to get back on the lead lap on a free pass. I saw the 5 of Alex Princeton. Not the 5 of Alex Princeton, excuse me. Another driver, I saw him a little bit slow down. That was Ryan Samuelson. He's going down pit road finally, so he stayed out. As we see a position change for P2, Preston McRae and the fresh tires will get by. We'll see how the 3 holds on from here on out.
He's gotten into the wall a couple more times since we called out that initial impact. I think those tires are just completely gone. He's not doing anything wrong with his driving. The tires are just not sticking in these corners. He's been on them for way longer than probably intended, and just hoping for this yellow flag that may or may not come. So eventually he's going to have to pit. That fuel cell is going to run dry, and he's going to have to pit. But for now, he's staying out on the track as Kevin Steele now going around on the outside. They are not on the same lap, so that's not going to be for position. But he's holding strong, and right now, Damaris Hickenbottom has gone a lap down. So that's down to 3 cars on the lead lap. Second place, Preston McRae, 21 seconds back from the leader. Brian Mabry, 24 seconds back, and just trying to hang on and hope for that caution. Eventually, Hixenbaugh is going to lap him back anyways, and the strategy might be for not. But I got to admire the bold call to commit to a strategy like this, to say, I'm going to stay out as long as I can and just hope for a caution. It takes a lot of gall. So commitment from the number 3 driver. Unfortunately, now he's going to have to bring it down pit road, potentially getting close on fuel, and definitely overdue on some new tires.
Yeah, he'll be on one of the freshest sets out of the rest of this field since he pitted so late. Also, Ryan Samuelson pitting late as well, so he's on those fresh tires. Hixenbaugh, meanwhile, continues to lap a lot of contentious guys in this field. He just lapped Hickenbottom, so that leaves, it was 3 now ever since Mabry did not hit pit road, but now it's just down to 2. It's Preston McRae and Hixenbaugh, the only drivers on this lead lap. Again, we're seeing the long green flag strategy and the drivers a lap down continue to play an effect into where positioning, everyone will be position-wise. So it's McRae, Hixenbaugh, the only ones on the lead lap right now. Hickenbottom, he just got passed, so he's going to have to find his way back around. Delaney got stuck a lap down, and I just mentioned that if Delaney was in his situation, he was hoping for a yellow to get the free pass. Now he has another car to get by before, if it's able to happen, and if a yellow comes out, he has to get by Hickenbottom in time, or else he will stay a lap down until the next yellow, or if he gets passed by anybody else on the 1 lap down. And the only other driver to contend with him 1 lap down, other than Hickenbottom, is Eric Wineland. So we have a multitude of drivers under the lead lap as we're getting to just about 40 laps to go in this race. Hixenbaugh continues to dominate.
The race is definitely for Lucky Dog. Bryson Hixenbaugh has the lead pretty much locked up at this point, barring anything happening. But these guys are really going to give it everything they can get to try to get back on the lead lap. It's the story we've seen all night long. Preston McRae, I got to say, he has done a fantastic job tonight with his strategy and just being able to keep his car clean. That's the difference right there, folks. That is fresh tires on that number 3 machine, powering around Bryson Hixenbaugh to reclaim one of his laps and try to make up some time. Unfortunately, not much race left here. We got 41 laps to go. It would take quite a rally to try and get back up to just being 1 lap down. Bryson Hixenbaugh at this point is probably just thinking, don't wreck. You know, if somebody wants to pass me, they got fresher tires, don't hold them up, don't be in their way, just keep it clean. Because right now, I think Bryson Hixenbaugh's greatest enemy would probably be himself if he were to get a little bit too confident. And that happens. Sometimes when you got a big lead like this, you get a little bit too confident in yourself or a little bit too lackadaisical. And you start making little mistakes. You have these lapses in concentration. So he's got to be on his game to avoid that happening. But that is pretty much his biggest enemy is right now. Preston McRae, definitely the bridesmaid right now, 24 seconds back. A strong run from him all night, like you said. P2, a great run and a great points day for this playoff driver.
And as we were going through the stage interviews, when Hixenbaugh won both stage 1 and stage 2, the phrase that he used most often, or at least he used in both interviews, he said, taking it easy. And that's really what's been the statement for that 63 all night long, is just taking it easy on his race car and not trying to push too much and not trying to force anything out of his race car. And he has been the successful driver of the entire field tonight, other than possibly Preston McRae, who's also done a great job of picking up to second after being in the top 10 the entire race through stage 1 and through stage 2. So, but Hixenbaugh has been taking it easy on his end, and he has been flawlessly executing every single corner. I haven't seen him hit the wall, not even once. Actually, there he brushes the wall just a little bit, but I've never seen any large damage on that race car whatsoever. And he's just been keeping it cool, and like he has been this entire season. That's really the result of why he's racked up 11 wins in this season, and possibly 12 if he can get it done tonight.
Absolutely. You know, Kenneth, I always wondered what a 25-second lead sounds like. How about we do a crank it up? So that's what a 25-second lead sounds like, and growing, Ken. Just an impressive, dominating run from Bryson Hixenbaugh, trying to lap the entire field. If that were to happen, whoa! Contact between Hixenbaugh and his own teammate. Really close call right there. Maybe maybe a little bit of a heart rate increaser for the leader there. Definitely not something you want to see. And hey, that gave 0.2 of a second back to Preston McRae. Not sure how much that's going to help him out, but who knows? Anything can happen. We're now on board with the leader once more, Ken.
Yeah, looking at the stats within this green flag run, we mentioned that Preston McRae is now just Hixenbaugh is now just 3.5 seconds off of McRae on the racetrack. McRae is 25.8 seconds the last time by further back from Hixenbaugh, so we might just witness a lap of Hixenbaugh lap the entire field through, not only just all the way up to, let's say, 5th or 4th. It's going to probably go all the way up to 2nd, and he'll be the only car on the lead lap. If we don't get a yellow, he will stay the only car on the lead lap unless he makes a drastic mistake that'll hurt him for the rest of this race or possibly take him completely out. So what we're seeing here is just complete domination at its finest, and I think at an extreme. We really never seen this from Hixenbaugh. Every single time we've covered the Galaxy Cup Series, it's never been this way, to the point where Hixenbaugh or any driver really has lapped the entire field through. So this will be a crazy accomplishment if Hixenbaugh can get it done. He's still further growing the gap between himself and second place McRae, so it's not out of the cards, and it is possible with just less than 30 laps to go. You
know, I got to ask you, Ken. We talked about Delaney potentially creating some rivals tonight with the incidents he's been involved in, but you know, I kind of feel like Bryson is putting a target on his back tonight. When you are the guy who has lapped almost the whole field and potentially will lap the whole field, people are going to remember that going forward. They're going to think, oh, it's this guy. And they're not going to give you any room. They're not going to be courteous. They're going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that they can try and beat you or best you in any way possible. And dominance does lead to putting a target on your back, I think. Would you agree, Ken?
Yeah, I'd say probably it gives a lot more motivation for the drivers behind to want to beat you even more, because if you're this dominant at this point, especially in the context of the playoffs, a lot of these drivers further back in the playoffs are probably going to want to beat him even more now that he's lapping the entire field and he's putting on performances like this. This is going to make you want to contend with Hixenbaugh even more than you maybe did earlier in the season. And now, especially if you're in the playoffs, you don't want to let Hixenbaugh go with this championship easy and do things like this every single race, or even throughout the entire round of 16, or maybe even going into the further rounds up until the championship 4. You don't want to see him do this, because it's going to be easy sailing for him in the 63, and he's going to be easily a champion. You want to eliminate him from doing that. You don't want to be so far behind, and obviously not within dirty reasons. You don't want to wreck Hixenbaugh. You probably don't want to do anything too aggressively, but you want to be contending there. We've seen a lot of drivers challenge with Hixenbaugh over the course of this season, especially within our couple of broadcasts. It was very quick to know that Hixenbaugh was so dominant, but I'd say if you're this dominant like Hixenbaugh is at the moment, you got to have some sort of target on your back. But really, I don't think Hixenbaugh feels it whatsoever.
Right. I mean, Hixenbaugh, he's a cool-headed guy. I don't think rivalries are anything that he gives too much thought to. But, you know, you mentioned you don't want to do anything too aggressive. You don't want to dump anybody who maybe has a target on their back. And you're 100% right. There are ways to race hard, though, and race clean. You know, pinching somebody down, not giving them a whole lot of space, forcing them into precarious situations where you're not necessarily wrecking them, but you are putting them in a tough spot. And I've seen that happen a lot. You know, somebody starts winning a lot, and suddenly nobody's being quite as courteous. So we're going to see if that happens. But right now, Bryson Hixenbaugh closing the gap even more, 1.5 seconds behind second place to lap him. 28-second lead total around this racetrack and 24 laps left. If it continues at this rate, he will lap him. And I got no words, man. I've never seen anything like this. I've been watching all forms of motorsport, whether it be simulations or real life, and I have never in my life seen something quite like this.
And when you watch even races in real life and even races on the sim, you never see this happen whatsoever, because I've seen in my commentating experience, I've seen certain leagues where, let's say, the top 10 would be the only cars on the lead lap, and it would go to the cars under lead lap would go further back from the top 10. It would just be, or maybe even the top 5, top 7, top 8 on the lead lap. But you never see a situation like this where it's just 2 cars on the lead lap, and it will probably soon to be just one, and it will be the race leader. And if a yellow does not come out, there will be no way for anyone to come up to Hixenbaugh unless Hixenbaugh makes a fatal mistake, or if somehow somebody is able to pick up speed and is able to unlap themselves from Hixenbaugh, which does not look likely with 22 laps to go. So it is just an unbelievable achievement what Hixenbaugh has been able to do here tonight at Darlington. We were questioning whether his car would get better through the night or whether it would kind of hinder off as we saw the drivers adapt to the nighttime conditions. We've seen some drivers get better. We've seen some drivers get worse. Most notably, for example, Preston McRae is one of those drivers who's gotten better over the course of the evening. When the sun was up and the sun was setting, he wasn't as quick, but as soon as the night started to fall, he started to pick up the speed, and that's why he's in second place where he is right now. And we obviously, people like Delaney, who lost their speed, of course, coupled with some incidents along the way, but Hixenbaugh, he's right there to the back bumper of McRae, almost about to lap the entire field. What a scenario.
Yeah, what a scenario indeed. I am massively surprised. You would think when you have literally a whole lap lead pretty much, you'd take it easy. You'd start letting off. You'd start backing off your throttle a little bit earlier, playing it safe. But not Mr. Hixenbaugh, apparently, because now he is right there. 0.7 seconds separates him and lapping the entire field. And closing down the straightaway. He's got a good run. He's going to tuck in and get that draft effect now, closing the gap entirely right up against the bumper, less than half a car length between the leader and second place. Now the question is, how defensive does second place play it? The answer is not very, because he just went down to the bottom, let him go, and with that, Bryson Hixenbaugh has lapped the entire field. This is unprecedented in league history.
Wow. I don't think we were ever expecting this to happen over our coverage at 3Y TV of this series, but it is a first for us to see one driver lap the entire field through. And now Preston McRae will go one lap down. But I think the only good news for Preston McRae is that his gap to Jonathan Delaney is very large. So McRae and at least Delaney and some other drivers, even though they're a lap down, they'll most likely be securing their positions. And there also could be battles between themselves, Delaney and Hickenbottom being fairly close together. Obviously, McRae and Delaney have a large gap. Wineland is there as well. There are drivers a lap down, and there are drivers fighting 2 laps down. Drumhiller, Brian Mabry, Alex Princeton, Kevin Steele. So the positions changing will continue to change if drivers are able to get up to each other, but in terms of the lead, it is looking impossible at the moment, as we've just now gone to 16 laps to go for Bryson Hixenbaugh. If a yellow does not come out, and even if it does, we'll just have one other driver on the lead lap, and it'll be the second place driver, Preston McRae. But for right now, Hixenbaugh, it is probably just to come home and finish the race. It is not to do anything else. It is not to push your car even further. It is not to do anything else but to just hang on and just try to finish this race the best way you can with a clean race car, which can be the case for a lot of the other drivers in this field. Either some drivers have gotten their Darlington stripe one way or another. They have a crinkle on their right front, their left front, maybe on the rear, on the front end of their car. We've seen it all here tonight, but Hixenbaugh has been flawless and clean the entire way through. Now coming through just 15 laps to go for Hixenbaugh to take a 12th win.
15 laps to one of the most dominating victories probably in league history as he makes his way around this circuit. And the 09 car looking to get a little bit loose. I thought initially that maybe he was going down to let somebody go, but he might have been given the 3 position. I'm not sure. It's hard to tell from the onboard, but you know, it's really something that you gotta pay attention to. Hickenbottom has had some bad luck in the recent races, and now climbing early on in this race to a top 5 and holding it all race long. As far as the I'm not Bryson Hixenbaugh division of the league goes, he is doing an absolutely phenomenal job. And I am super impressed with the pace he's carried into this race. And if Darlington's not a short track. It's not a short track, but it does race like one, especially down in 3 and 4. And if this is the kind of pace we can expect to see from Hickenbottom going forward, you mentioned we've got 2 short tracks coming up in the schedule. If this is the pace he's going to bring, he could be a dark horse, unexpected comeback driver for this playoff. He came in close to the bubble, and now he is going to be finishing in the top 5, gathering some points.
And not only does Hickenbottom have a great performance, there's a multitude of great performances even in this top 5. Jonathan Delaney, for example, boy, Andre, you and I have talked about him through every week in and week out, and he's been involved in crashes, been involved in incidents. We saw what happened in Michigan, what happened at Watkins Glen. We've seen it happen over and over for that 6 car, but to come home in a first playoff race of the season in the first round to set the tone and finish on the podium is definitely something not to complain about whatsoever, because he'll be gaining a lot of points. Of course, McRae, Hickenbottom, and Hickenbottom, they'll be in close proximity. Lots of playoff drivers in this top 5 and up to the top 7, but it is still nonetheless great performances for all the drivers right behind Hickenbottom, and they've been able to muster great finishes out of the regular season ending, which did not look so great for a lot of these drivers. So to see them pick that up and to see them put on a show and do their performance when it matters, it's definitely something that could be a whole conversation different from what Hickenbottom has done this season, and it gives them motivation, gives them a little bit of positivity, knowing that their cars are fast and they're able to contend with a lot of these other drivers and gain points along the way. So Hickenbottom continues to lead with just 10 laps to go, and this is just going to be the final stride for the 63 to pick up his 12th win of the season. And also another accomplishment to be had, 12 wins. Have you seen that before, Andre?
No. No, I have never seen anything like any of this going on. But going back to John Delaney, I was ready to call him out of this race. I was saying, his car is damaged, he's off pace. Maybe he can get something gathered up. I never expected him to get back up to the podium, and he has done an absolutely phenomenal job rallying that wounded horse back up to a podium and putting on a wonderful showing. I mean, when he got that damage and he was falling back, I'm like, he's done. He's out of the race. But no, leave it to Jonathan Delaney to prove us wrong and get back up there in P3.
Yeah, Delaney has had his struggles, and even though he's been in a hole tonight where he's had that damage, he had that spin at the end of stage 2. What a way to pick all that back up and finish 3rd, and that would be a great one for Delaney. And referring back to what I said earlier in this broadcast a couple hours back, the never give up attitude. You don't give up even when the situation isn't looking so great, as you're now looking at the battle for 4th place, closest battle on the racetrack between the 09 of Hickenbottom and the 31 of Wineland. These two are 1 lap down, but nonetheless, this is for position. Here comes Wineland to the inside. He's going to back off for the moment, and he's going to try to hit the reset button, try something once again as Kevin Steele puts on the pressure. Now going to go to the inside, but Wineland will have the momentum off turn number 4, and close contact. There goes the 31, almost around, but he saves it once again.
Wow. What a save by not only Eric Wineland, but also, I believe that was the 44. Yep, the 44. Look at the save he makes. He gets hit right square in the door and keeps that thing going straight. And Eric Wineland, ping-ponging between the wall and his competitors, actually manages to get that thing going straight again. We've seen Eric Wineland make an absurd amount of really impressive saves tonight, and it's definitely a testament to his ability.
Unbelievable. And while that was happening, guess who's behind them the entire time? That's Bryson Hickenbottom. Now he's behind Eric Wineland to possibly put him 2 laps down. Kevin Steele just a little bit faster on the tires than these 2 guys right here. So he was trying to get around, and that resulted in the contact. Unbelievable save by Wineland, who we saw do the same thing off turn 4 earlier in this race, where he looked like he was going to swip back into the rest of the field, but he was able to lock up the brakes and saved the race car from going around. So another phenomenal performance of keeping the car straight for that 31, just trying to hang on now as we approach 4 laps to go in this race. It is all Bryson Hickenbottom. It has always been Bryson Hickenbottom. He's led every lap but 5, and that was not due to drivers passing him on the racetrack, just on the lead lap. This was because of the pit strategy that allowed other drivers to get lead laps, including Preston McRae. So the 63 has never really had anyone to battle with other than lap traffic, and pretty much that would be it. He never really had a driver behind in second to battle with him all night long, and he's coming to the front stretch, and he's approaching these final laps. He's going to take a 12th win, and really not much to say. It's just all sailing from here on out.
Sailing indeed. That's a pretty good word for it, as Bryson Nixonbaugh has just put Eric Wineland 2 laps down. So now it is second, third, and fourth that are 1 lap down. That is the battle for the lucky dog position were we to get a yellow flag, which initially I thought we probably wouldn't get before the end of this race. But the way these guys have been driving, maybe. I don't think it's necessarily a super high likelihood, given that we're about to take the white flag, and at that point, the next flag would end the race, but you never know. Jonathan Delaney, you're seeing him on screen. He's there in third place. He's the bridesmaid to the lucky dog position behind McRae. McRae still holding strong in P2. And right now, it's going to be Hixenbaugh coming around turns 1 and 2 for the final lap of the race.
Hixenbaugh led every single lap but 5. He started on the pole. We saw how many restarts he's been able to jump in front of the field. A dominant performance is definitely an understatement for Hixenbaugh. Laps the entire field, and he'll come off of turn 4. Bryson Hixenbaugh has a dozen full of wins in the Galaxy Cup Series, and he takes his 12th here at Darlington Raceway in the first round of the Galaxy Cup Series playoffs.
He's going to slow it down for the first time all night long and bring it down to the apron. Get ready to burn that thing to the ground. I'm sure it's going to be one heck of a celebration. You can't win like that and not celebrate just as fiercely. So we're going to wait for him to bring it around. But, man, we said it earlier, but I'm speechless. I can't even describe how crazy it is to see somebody win by this margin at a track like this in a league full of people who are so good at what they do, so competent. And yet still, he drove to a lap lead over the rest of the field. Eric Wineland obviously gave him a bump there, saying, hey, congratulations, buddy. Probably a little bit begrudgingly, but Eric Wineland being a good sport there, giving him the bump. And now the leader, the winner, Bryson Nixonbaugh, is going to burn it down.
He's going to stop in right in front of the start-finish line, and he's going to burn it down on a most deserved win for Highside Racing and the 63 of Bryson Hixenbaugh. Going to burn it down on the front straightaway, and while he's doing that and celebrating, we'll take a look at your race results, see where everybody or your favorite driver may have finished here tonight at Darlington. Of course, you just see the race winner lap the entire field to take his 12th win of the season. Preston McRae comes home second. I was going to say starting the train of guys a lap down, but you can't. You're going to go second place to find that. Jonathan Delaney picks up third. Demaris Hickenbottom survives to finish fourth. Eric Wineland finishes 2 laps down in the top 5. Randy Drumhiller finishes 6th. Brian Mabry finishes 7th. Kevin Steele finishes 8th. Unbelievable race for him after being involved in the first caution on lap 1. Alex Princeton finishes 9th. Jack Durham comes home with a top 10 finish.
Most laps led Bryson Hixenbaugh, 362 laps, all but 5, like you said. Absolutely insane, showing his team high side now lines up on the straightaway for a bit of a team celebration there. But we're going to throw it to commercial. When we get back, it's going to be more action, post-race action, and some interviews from the top 3.
Welcome back to the track Too Tough to Tame in the Darlington Raceway, where we have had an unprecedented event happen in the Galaxy Cup Series. Bryson Hixenbaugh takes his 12th win and laps the entire field to do it. We're going to bring him in from victory lane. And Bryson, first of all, congratulations on your 12th win of the season. But first of all, to ask, you lapped the entire field in this race win. Can you say you ever did that before in a race car on iRacing?
I have before, not on an oval. It's real interesting to be able to do it on an oval, and especially in a long race like this, gives you the opportunity. But you got to be fast and you got to be consistent with it.
Yeah, and you truly showed consistency through this entire race from lap 1 all the way to lap 367. You led 362 laps apart from 5. Just walk us through your car. I know your car was probably phenomenal. It was so fast on the racetrack going around each corner. Just tell us the way your car handled and how you were able to successfully go through all lap traffic and get through each green flag pit stop successfully in first.
Yeah, it was a really great car. Got to thank Andrew Skelnick for that. He made the setup this week and did a lot of work on it in practice sessions and NIS working with it. He made a great car and worked on that a lot, and it's just riding through the corners, and it feels perfect in 3 and 4 every lap. Just set it in there and it sticks. And on the short run, you can really send it through 1 and 2 as well, so it's just great all around.
And a phenomenal car and a 12th win of the season. Going into Richmond next week, you have this win on your belt. Is there more confidence now going into Richmond and Bristol, knowing that you just picked up the win in this fashion tonight?
It'll definitely help me out confidence-wise because the playoffs, of course, reset everything. So even though I was the points leader beforehand and I had the most playoff points going in, it still evens the playing field a little bit. It's good to get this win and stay in the first round and advance automatically. I can kind of take it a little bit easier in the next 2 rounds, but we'll see how those go and whether I can go for more wins, more playoff points, or just let it go.
Before we let you go, Bryson, to celebrate your victory here at Darlington Raceway, do you have any teams or anybody that you'd like to shout out for making tonight's effort possible?
I'd like to shout out my throwback this week. It is a Tracy Leslie Hensley Motorsports throwback from the late 90s. Hensley Motorsports ran a lot of the Lysol cars, and there's not a whole lot of 63s in NASCAR, so it's good to throw back to one that did exist. I like making those schemes for those and showing them off.
All right, Bryson. Well, congratulations on win number 12. We hope to see you at Richmond and at Bristol in the rest of this first round of the playoffs. And, of course, once again, unbelievable finish. We were just sitting here in awe in the booth watching you lap every single driver in this field. So congratulations, and we wish you luck going into Richmond next week.
Thank you guys so much. It means a lot. It's great to have these broadcasts here, and hope to talk to you guys again next week.
Bryson Hixenbaugh, 12th win of the season, comes here at Darlington Raceway. We'll slip back to P number 2, or the driver to get lapped the last. Driver to get lapped at last was Preston McRae in the 53. He was the last one to get lapped, I should say, on the racetrack. He finishes P2. He is trackside with Andre Graham.
Preston McRae, you got a copy?
Hey, what's up, Andrew?
Not much. Well, you did a great job out there tonight. P2, you can't complain about a podium finish. You were really consistent out there. You managed to avoid a lot of the incidents going on around you. You kept your car pretty clean. What was your goal going in tonight, and did your P2 finish exceed it?
Yeah, I'd say it succeeded a little bit. I was just trying to ride around the back, try to avoid all the wrecks. And then I wanted to try to obviously finish as close to the front as I could, and with the least amount of incident points. And I succeeded in that goal. I was hoping to have a little something for Bryson, but you know how Bryson is. The dude's fast. Nobody can catch him.
Well, if anybody put up a fight, it was you. You ran a great race. You were the last driver to be put a lap down, to fall victim to his dominant performance tonight. It seemed like the car was really good out there. Does this P2 finish at a track that is so tough and so treacherous give you a little bit more confidence going forward in the playoffs when we got some tough tracks like Richmond coming up?
Yeah, a little bit. Darlington's not one of my strong tracks, so I'd say it gives me a little bit of confidence.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to seeing what you can do, and we wish you the best of luck in the coming races and the rest of the playoffs. Thank you for your time, Preston.
Yep. Thank you, Andrew.
All right, that was Preston. Now moving back to P3, John Delaney. Kenneth's got him.
And Jonathan, welcome to the 3Y TV booth. You got a copy, first of all?
Yes, I do.
Jonathan, you went through, I'd say, hell and back for this race. You had a great showing in the early portion of this race. You were running second. You had some things to face with. I know you had some damage along the way. That incident with you, Zach Probst, and Cameron Stone was something that happened and something notable that gave you some damage. Just first of all, just walk us through your entire race in general. I know you had a lot to deal with here at Darlington, and just describe to us how tough this track was for you to maneuver around.
We definitely had a pretty fast car on the long run, for sure. We were up there in stage 1, and then just had a missed accident in turn 3. I feel bad for Zach and Cam that got into that. I wasn't planning on that. It just sucks that I ruined their races as well. It sucks. But then we came back down pit road, got it all fixed, worked our way back up there. And then around stage 2, after the pit stops, I was fighting Eric, and we had a really nice battle there. We were going at it for a good 10-15 laps, and just pushed it a little too hard out of 2, hit the wall, and hit the inside wall then. So that set us back a good bit, and just hanged on from the rest of the night there on. So yeah.
You had a lot to deal with, and you come home on your podium spot here, and you certainly gain a lot of points going into next week's race at Richmond. And speaking of Richmond, what are your thoughts of going 2 races in a row on the short track to close out the first round, and what your game plan is going forward?
It'll definitely be really interesting to see what happens. They're short tracks, so basically anything can happen. A wreck can happen. But I did pretty good at Richmond last summer here, so hopefully we can come back and do that again.
Well, Jonathan, before we let you go on your P3 finish, do you have any sponsors, any teams, or just anyone you'd like to shout out or thank for making today's effort possible?
I'd like to thank Kevin Steele, as always, for the paint. Like to thank just the Galaxy guys, Galaxy admin team, for putting this together. You guys up in the booth, broadcasting it. It's always awesome. And just everyone who raced tonight. It was awesome.
Well, we thank you for taking the time to talk with us. I know it was a crazy race for you, but a well-deserved P3 at the end of the night. Jonathan, we hope to see you at Richmond and Bristol next week, and we wish you luck going into the next rounds. I know things have been tough tonight, but hopefully they seem to be a little better coming into next week and the weeks on.
Yep, thanks, guys.
Jonathan Delaney out of the booth. He finishes on the podium spot in P3, and that will finalize all the interviews for tonight's action here at Darlington Raceway. The track too tough to tame. Andre, if there was really one word to describe the performance that Higginbotham put on tonight, or really what just happened here at Darlington in general, I think the word that we probably both agree with is complete decimation.
I would agree. I don't think there's any other way to put it. A dominating performance. I've never seen anything like this before. I'm not sure I'll ever see anything like this again. Absolutely insane performance by Bryson Higginbotham. And, you know, we talked a lot about how great he did, but you can't understate the other guys in the field and the great jobs that they did. So a lot of these guys, John Delaney, getting good finishing positions to carry these points forward into the playoffs and hopefully get that momentum to the very end. So, yeah, wild race, Ken.
Unbelievable finish. And if you want to catch more of the Galaxy Cup Series, you can do so next week and next Saturday, Richmond Raceway, where we'll go live at 8 p.m. Eastern to cover race number 2 of the first round of the round of 16 in the Galaxy Cup Series playoffs. Andre and I and Carlos will be on the call on the action for that on the broadcast, and it will be a lot of fun. And we'll see exactly how the playoffs continue to shake up, especially after tonight. We appreciate and thank each and every one of you for tuning in to the broadcast here on 3Y TV. A big thanks to Sim TV for providing the camera packages and, of course, giving us beautiful views of these virtual race cars. Congratulations to Bryson Higginbotham, who waves goodbye to the Lady in Black with a 12th win in the Galaxy Cup Series season. And on behalf of all of us at 3 Wide TV, for Andre Grambush, Carlos Costa up in the producer studio, we say good night from Darlington Raceway. We'll be at Richmond in 1 week time, where we continue to go playoff racing.